everybody. This with the I guess we're going to call it the Dale and Jim show. We've been meeting every
Jim and
Wednesday.
Dale. Jim and Dale.
Jim and Dale. Okay, sounds like Chip and Dale, but anyway, Jim and the Jim and Dale show at 7 o'clock. We just got guys. We just got done with right down the middle of the season. Here's 11 weeks. We just got done with week 6. We only have 5 more weeks of regular. I think that's or 4. Was it 4 weeks? Got 4 weeks left, don't we? No, 5 weeks. That's right. I got 8.
5 weeks.
Yeah. So we're just right there. We're about to get to the very end. The end of the month is be the last week of the season. So anyway, guys, I'm going to start out with Coach Trotter. Coach Trotter, I'm going to leave it to you. You got a lot to talk about. We wanted to go ahead and be very cognizant of your family time. So, Coach Trotter,
appreciate it, guys. So, we talked about trying to do a little segment and doing some, talking about some different subjects. And Jim, you got me thinking, asking about different offenses I've ran in the past and things I'd want to do. And Dale talking about, let's talk about some different position specific requirements. So I was like, why don't we just combine it? Let's pick an offense or defensive scheme. Let's do a quick little, overview of it. We're not going to do a full deep dive. We don't have full, time for all that, but pick a couple concepts from, let's say, an offense. Let's talk about what the offense's philosophies are, what they're looking for in their players, to best fit that scheme. Some schemes kind of require certain positions and certain characteristics from those positions. And so I thought, let's start with one that I think a lot of people like and enjoy. And you kind of see that's, all over the place now. It's even in the NFL kind of full-time, granted a little bit different from its purest form. But let's talk a little air raid today. A lot of area schools are running it. A lot of guys having a lot of success with it. So let me get down here. Let's see if I can remember how to share this screen again. And let's go entire screen. All right. And if you guys can see this, y'all let me know.
All right. I've just turned it on.
I can see it.
Yep.
Got Hal Mummy and then Mike Leach there back in their Kentucky days.
That's right.
All right, so that's your two kind of the godfathers of the air raid. Granted, if you get into it deep, I mean, they stole stuff from BYU and the run and shoot and some West Coast stuff. But there only left Hal Mummy, then Coach Mike Leach, who's now at Mississippi State. Those are kind of the two guys that really, Hal started it in Texas, down in high school down in Texas, and then went to Iowa Wesleyan and brought Mike in, and then kind of progressed to Valdosta, Georgia, and then Kentucky when they were here. And then Coach Leach went his own way to Oklahoma and then Texas Tech and had that whole ordeal there. And then Washington State, now Mississippi State, and had a big win this week against Texas A&M. But let's kind of look at the basic philosophy of the run and shoot, of the air raid. So for the air raid, they want to spread the field out. And Coach Mummy always says, we want to throw it short in space to players who can score. Okay. They want to, most of the time, utilize 4 wide receiver sets. That opens up the passing lanes. All 5 threats, your 4 receivers and your running back are all pass threats. Very limited playbook. You're not going to have one of these deep playbooks with 30, 40 or, plays on it. It's not going to look like Coach Fisher's, what was it, Cheesecake Factory play sheet over there where he's got 17 pages of stuff. I mean, Coach Leach, if you look at it, he's using like the back of a napkin. The big thing for them is just reps. And again, Coach Mummy always says, you must have a great capacity for boredom because they're going to rep this stuff so much that it becomes second nature. And it helps having a limited playbook that you can do that. You're not having to, pick and choose what you want to get in that day when you've got a limited playbook like that. General position descriptions here. Now, is this carry for everything? No. There's always going to be some variation to it. Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma runs a version of the air raid that's a little bit different. They all kind of have their own take on it now. But if we look at the purest form, the quarterback must be accurate and make quick decisions. Doesn't require a super strong arm. These guys with a cannon arm that can throw it 70 yards from his knees through the uprights and all that stuff. You don't have to have an athletic mobile quarterback, although having those characteristics is always, nice addition to it. It's not required. The big thing is being accurate in your throws and being able to make quick smart decisions. Size as well doesn't matter. Yes, having a 6'5" quarterback's nice, but if you look at some of the best quarterbacks that have come through those systems, it hasn't been that prototypical guy. Your running backs are very rarely used in pass protection. These guys are going to be involved. They like to release all 5 out because that stresses the defense. They're going to be involved in almost all the passing concepts. They're not going to lead anyone in rushing stats. A lot of times they're going to have just as many, passing yards as they will, passing or receiving yards as they will rushing yards. Your X receiver, this is a prototypical wide receiver. If you think about a guy that's a wide receiver body and ability, that's that guy. The X is always going to line on the left side of the offense. This is a part of what makes this offense kind of go. They believe in position specialization. You learn how to run this route from the left side for the X. Why do I need to flip you over? Now you're having to learn from a different direction when you can get more reps running it from the same side. So you develop that muscle memory. The H is their slot. Whenever they're in a 2-by-2 formation, 2 receivers left, 2 right, he's going to be to the left in the slot. He moves to the right side. If they need to go to a 3-by-1, 3 receivers to the right, he'll move to the right side. And some of the early stuff with Coach Mummy and even some of the ones now, the H can move into the backfield as a second running back. But typically in the purest form, Mike Leach 4 wide, he's going to line in the left in the slot. The Y receiver, and a lot of times when you see Y, you think, tight end, hand down, big guy. Not necessarily the case with the area. This is going to be a bigger receiver a lot of times. Some athletic tight end types have played this role, but it still needs to be somebody that can run vertically and catch the ball. They're going to line on the right side of the ball, inside, but on the line of scrimmage. And he's always going to line up on the right side. And then your Z, again, is another prototypical wide receiver. The Z was Michael Crabtree at Texas Tech when they beat Texas that year. In 2-by-2, he's always on the right. And then if they want to go to a 3-by-1 look on the left, he'll motion over to the left side. But that's the general description of what you're going to look for in these guys. Now, let's talk about high school and how this relates. Of course, there's going to be pros and cons to every offense. All right. The biggest cons for high school, especially at the smaller school level, even though still at the big schools, not every school has 4 legitimate wide receivers to put out there. Okay. You may have 1 or 2 studs and then 1 or 2 guys that are, decent enough to start, but not the guys that you're going to count on. The problem with the offense is sometimes it's hard to get the matchups that you want because of the fact that the X is always on the left and the Z is always on the Z's outside right, and then the Y is always on the right. And you can't move your guys around as much without getting away from what the philosophy of the offense is, which is being very simple in the aspect of not having a lot of moving parts, but able to rep that stuff so that it's second nature. This offense is a progression read offense. What that means is the quarterback knows when they call a concept, okay, this is my first read, this is my second read, this is my third read. What happens is sometimes based upon the progression, you may not be throwing to your best guy against the best matchup because of the way the progression works. So it doesn't allow you to get to your best guy at times. And, of course, it does require you to have a quarterback that can throw the ball. Again, not every school has a kid that can effectively do that. This offense revolves around the quarterback. If you don't have a guy at that position, especially at the high school level, colleges, you go and recruit that guy. High schools, for the most of us, we can't do that. So, you're stuck making sure that you have a guy that can do that and trying to develop that up through your if you got a middle school that's attached or a JV program. The pros of the offense, limited playbook allows for easier learning. All right, especially for high school. A lot of time you got guys playing both ways. All right, the less that you have to have that 14, 15, 16-year-old remember, the better. Okay, so by always playing this guy on the left and he always has this route and this concept, it allows for those guys to learn it quicker, pick it up, and retain that information. The position specialization is what's really key in that, to where you're always at this position or that position. And then something that's not neither a pro or con, it's just a different way of doing things, is the fact that these routes are what we call static routes, to where there's not a lot of post-snap options for you. You're pretty much, if you have, a 3-step slant, you have a 3-step slant no matter what. And the reads of the quarterback will take them to who's open, not necessarily the receivers adjusting their routes to get open. Like we'll see, the week that we cover the run and shoot, we'll cover post-snap route conversions based upon coverage and leverage and how those are different. So I'm going to get into two of the more well-known concepts of the air raid. And what I'll try to do, if I have high school film of a team that I've done, I've ran this offense with, I'm going to show it. I'm going to try not just to steal everybody else's stuff. I want to show what we've done. So for us, this is the mesh play, 92 in the air raid playbook is what it's called. But everybody knows it as mesh. And that's because of this concept, this part of the concept right here. Now, this is the Mike Leach version. Hal Mumme has a little bit different version, but it's the same principles. But I prefer the Mike Leach version. So the progression for this is not the mesh. This is what we consider the check down. All right. And that's why I think a lot of people who try to run this concept mess up, because they think this is the primary when it's not. So what we typically teach our guys when we run mesh is we're going to look to one of these outside extra Z routes. These guys are going to run 10 yards and they're going to break this either deeper or flat. It's a little bit of a post-snap conversion. But they're looking to get to this grassy area over here. We're going to read which side has the loosest corner or which side matchup we like better. So if the corner over the Z is playing at 10 yards and the corner over the X is playing at 5, we're probably going to go to the Z side because he's got more ability to press that route vertically and get open. We tell our running back which side to run his swing route to based upon which side that we're going to read. All right, so if we want to throw this thing to the right, like this is drawn up, okay, he'd tell the running back, all right, you're going right. Now I drew him up in the pistol just to keep it even left to right here. So the quarterback's progression on this, he's going to read this corner route. All right, if he doesn't like it, he comes down to the read for the swing, which will be the underneath defender in this situation, okay? If he flies out to take away the swing, we immediately hit the front side mesh. If he sits in this window, we dump the swing. He gets up the sidelines. We'll pick up 5-6 yards. All right. Now let's talk about the mesh route itself, because this is where a lot of the magic kind of happens with this play when the outside isn't there. The right side will always run over, will always be on top. The H will always come underneath. We want these guys so tight that they can slap hands as they run by each other. We don't no space in between them. We teach to run the route at 4 yards. Why? Because if I tell a high school kid to run it at 4, he's going to run it at 6 or 7. That's just the nature of it. All right. But typically we want this route around 4, but no deeper than 6, between 4 to 6 yards. All right. As they're running across the field, they're looking at their partner. If his defender is in his hip running with him, he knows it's man coverage. We always run away from man coverage. So as he's attacking across, he sees man coverage, he keeps running his route. If he looks over and he sees nobody trailing his partner, now he knows it's zone coverage. We sit in zone. So as he runs over here, once they cross, he finds a hole and sits down, and he'll sit down on this side. So now that way when the quarterback goes from 1 to 2, now he comes back to 3 in here in the mesh. If it's man, this guy's running. If it's zone, he's sitting in the window. So we treat the whole mesh as 3. But really, we kind of teach our guys 1 to 2 to front side 3, back side 4. In high school, if you're getting the 4, you've got an amazing offensive line. But it is what it is there with, most of the time we're going 1 to 2. So that's the mesh play, 92. And then the other play, and this is out of the early formation, which is now the H has come over. This can be a 2x2 play, but I really like it out of 3x1. All right, this is Y stick. So outside has what we call a must outside release vertical. He's getting outside the corner, getting down the field. The H is running a 4 to 5 yard out cut here. The Y is running what we call stick route. He's going 5 yards, turning inside. Backside slant, and we send the running back on a swing opposite of the trips. All right. What we're looking for here is what this defender does. Okay. If they're rolled down tight, we got 3 over 3. Okay. We're going to try to pick the inside shoulder of that defender. We're going to run to his inside shoulder, throw it down. If they're playing some type of loose covers 2 over 3 with backers, we're going to sit in the open window and we're going to hit that wide receiver as much as we possibly can. It's a quick game throw. It's a catch and shoot. It's very, very effective. You can run this out of a lot of different formations. A lot of offenses can put this concept in, but it's a way to get your bigger possession receiver the ball on the inside, and it's a way to get the ball out of your quarterback's hands really quickly. So if you are having some protection issues, this is a catch and shoot throw. Your progression here is for us, this is I keep hitting that button. This is a pre-snap read. If we like it, we'll take that shot. The backside is a pre-snap read for us. If there's nobody in this window, we'll throw the backside slant. All right, and then it comes back to the Y and the H. Where are these defenders playing? Where do we have leverage pre-snap? So I will stop that. And now I'm going to give you guys a little bit of film. Any questions before I go to that?
Quick question for you. I know some coaches don't really care for left-handed quarterbacks. What's your feelings about that? And does it matter if he's left-handed or right-handed in this type of offense?
I don't think it matters. I know some people don't like left-handed quarterbacks because the ball comes out weird and it messes your protection stuff up. I'll be honest with you, I've always wanted to have a left-handed quarterback just to be able to, to kind of mess with teams a little bit, because it does, for a defense, is different. You're used to the defense's right side being the back side of the quarterback.
Right.
So it offers some advantages, I think. I've never understood not wanting to have a left-handed quarterback. Now, I guess in the sense that, most right-handed quarterbacks like to throw quick game to the left, just because it's an easier catch and shoot for them left than it is right. Although the kid that I had this spring and the one I have this fall prefers to go to the right. It blows my mind. But, I don't think – honestly, what I think it is, it's a comfort for the coach, what he's used to calling, and as opposed to having to flip everything in his head, would probably be what it is. So I'm going to show this mesh concept. Now, the formation is just a tiny bit different. We adjusted it based upon the kids we had. And we ran this out of some condensed sets, but it's the same route progression. This receiver up here at the top, he's going to run the corner route. We're going to run the mesh with the 2 insides. The back is swinging to this side. We're running this to the field. And again, you can look here. This corner's playing at 6 yards, 7 yards. This one's rolled up tight. We definitely like this side. So as he takes off, if the corner plays under it, his eyes immediately come back. Do I want the swing or do I want to hit the front side mesh? So we'll see what we have here. All right, right now, corner's dropping. We don't like it. Backer's kind of in no man's land. He's just kind of sitting there. This is our fastest player on the team at running back. Quarterback dumps it off. Ball in our best athlete's hands in space. We just picked up 12 yards, roughly. All right, one more time on this one just to kind of see. If you watch this backer right here, he's going to be the secondary read key. So initially, boom, we don't like it. He's sitting inside. Let's get the ball out in space. 10, 12, 13 yards on that play. All right, same play again. Now this time, we beat that corner outside. It's kind of a cover 2 look. So we had a corner playing underneath, safety playing over top. We got into the window. Outside throw. So
your running back actually did some blocking on this play, right?
Yeah, we had to check out. If you notice, we got a different kid in this week. This was 2018. All right, this was the last game of the year. We had some injuries, and this kid right here was an inside linebacker that we just moved over to kind of help with some protection stuff. And we went with a 6-man protection because we needed it. So we're trying to get the ball out a little more vertically against these guys. We felt like we could, but we needed the help on the protection. Normally he would have been swung, but we had to keep him in. Now we did try to swing him here. Now you'll watch. Now we have a little bit of a mess up. The right side should be going over top, but the backer's getting away. So we make it work. All right. We have collision here. This isn't a pick. He's legitimately trying to run a route. This isn't him trying to set this up. It just happened that way. And that's why we like to have those guys run tight, because if there is collision, somebody's getting peeled off, and it's going to open up the receiver here. And we're able to get, again, another good pickup. All right. I believe this game was against Maiden. All right. Same play. We don't do a good job on the mesh, but you'll see up top, he's got leverage. And that was about a 17-yard gain. Again, we'll hit this outside, or he missed that throw.
How many seconds does your offensive line? How much do you expect them to block every play?
Realistically, we're trying to get the ball out in less than 3 seconds. I mean, high school offensive line, I don't expect those guys to be amazing. Get run over slowly is kind of like what we jokingly say. Just get enough time for our quarterback to get rid of the ball, which is why we like these throws, because they're quick progression reads that don't take a lot of time. That's why I said you can't get to that third, fourth one. There's no way. You can sometimes get to the third one, but typically the fourth one is not going to be in the picture here. So I tell our quarterback he's not going to have 3 seconds, because the 3 second number is what everybody quarterback needs 3 seconds. That's not going to happen. You got to get rid of the football unless you've just got an amazing offensive line.
So can I ask you a question right there?
Yes, sir.
So let's suppose the offensive line has given us our 3 seconds, and maybe the quarterback's been able to get to 2 or 3 reads, and then he's able to make a step out. How many quarterbacks you think in high school can actually get down to a 4th read? How often have you seen that happen?
The kid that you see in this picture right here was a sophomore, and he was actually our JV quarterback until we had injuries to our starters. So, and he picked the offense up pretty well. I think that obviously the longer you're in the offense, the more comfortable you are with it, the better you are. Early on, year one, especially in this offense, I wouldn't ask somebody to try to get that far down and through their reads. And really, in high school football, one of your first 2 reads is probably going to be open. If you're having concepts that are forcing you to go to your 4th read in high school, you probably need to scrap it and find something else that works better for you. Maybe I'm just not good enough a coach to teach that. But again, I don't think that at this level, most teams that you're playing don't have 11 guys on defense going to play in college football. So you need to find out where that weak guy is, where those, number 10 and 11 as far as talent, and try to exploit that and pick on those guys. Did that answer you a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to the next one. This is why stick. Now, again, the difference is we keep our guys off. We kept our outside guys on just because it made it simple for us. But again, this is why stick. So we're going to run a vertical route here. We're going to run an out cut. He's going to run the stick route. This team right here is playing too high. They've got 6 in the box to take away our run game. So they're playing over 3 over the Y. He's 9 yards, 8-9 yards off the ball. Now, our receiver here understands that. He runs a quick out to open this window up even more. So something we talked about, if they align like this out cut becomes really quick. Pull him out, force him to decide, is he staying on you or the stick route? Our Y in this case, he's 6'2", 220. Big kid. Not the fastest, probably a 5'1", 40. He just gets in the window, and then he's just a big – same game. All right. Same play. We widen the formation out even more. We're on the left hash almost. We widened these guys out. Now we're outside the numbers, and this whole area right here is wide open. As soon as we called the play, quarterback already knew where he was going with the ball. It makes the progression a whole lot easier when you get a coverage like this. This is my favorite play from this spring.
No, that's just poor defense. I'm sorry. No adjustment. That's
the year beforehand. Sorry, this kid was 6'2", 170 pounds, and in that layoff over COVID, that kid put on 50 pounds of muscle in the weight room, doing it on his own at his house, pretty much, and it showed off here. Yeah, the problem is we were hurting them so bad in the box with our run game that they did not want to pull somebody out, but they were afraid of us getting behind them, so they played too high. So when you do that, you're just trying to pick your poison at this point. And so which would you rather stop? Do you want to stop our run game? Do you want to get beat deep, or do you want to try to leave the slowest receiver on the field with some space? You just got to come up and make a play. I mean,
that's too much space.
If they make the tackle there, it's 4th and 2. It's too much space. But if they make the tackle there, it's 4th and 2. Now he makes an amazing play here and uses that weight room and gets in the end zone. I swear I didn't pick all these from the same game, but it was just they were the first 3 I pulled up when I saw it. 3rd and 5. All right, sits in the hole. There's your Y stick play. Simple play to just, I think it's the first one again. Yep. Very simple play, quick game. Ball gets out of your quarterback's hands fast. You don't have to worry about, getting a bunch of pressure. I think that stopped sharing. There we go. You don't have to worry about getting a bunch of, quarterback getting a lot of pressure on him. You don't have to worry about taking unnecessary hits. It's a simple, really one read throw. Especially if they're leaving that number 3 uncovered, which a lot of times teams will do that to keep the number guys in the box to stop your running game. And that's why I like the way Lincoln Riley runs his version of the air raid a little bit more than, and I'm not nothing against Mike Leach because the man's an amazing coach, but I think when you have a balanced offense where you force teams to have to defend the run game more than expecting you to throw the ball 40 or 50 times a game, that it opens up those quick game throws because they have to get into the box. So that's 2 quick concepts out of the air raid. Talk about positions, kind of the descriptions, what guys are looking for those. Next week we may go with the run and shoot, or I may jump into some Browse Baylor offensive stuff, or maybe in a little Gus Malzahn, whatever y'all want to hear. Y'all let me know. I'll pull some stuff because I've kind of run a little bit of all that, so we can get a little bit of film for y'all and discuss some of those different things moving forward.
Oh, that was awesome. Air raid is becoming very popular. So
yeah, I mean,
a lot of linebacker down to your on screen to your lower right there. So he has to deal with this stuff. Left.
Yeah, those are tough offenses to guard.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're good. They can exploit you in a lot of different ways. But hopefully, I know a lot of teams are running it being effective now. So we'll see. But next week, y'all let me know what y'all want to hear, and I'll put something together for you.
All right, that sounds great. I know you need to get to your daughter, so let's let you do that.
All right, thank y'all. Have a good week.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Okay, Jim, I'm gonna let you start this thing out.
That sounds pretty good. I'll tell you what, that was a lot of fun listening about the air raid.
What did you think?
I was thinking, the Arizona Cardinals, don't they run the air raid, or sometimes they run it? I think they're the only NFL team left that's 4-0 right now that's undefeated this season. That is
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just if you look at the NFL this year, I think there's one under team and then 2 that haven't won a game, and we're only gone through 4 weeks. That's pretty impressive. Shows a lot about parity, but. So I think we have got a guest on the show with us, Dale. Is it Panos? Panos. Okay. Yeah, yes, being from the South, we can't pronounce anything.
Yeah.
At least I can't. So I'm sure you've
heard
it.
Good.
Yeah. Is that Greek or Italian?
Greek name.
Greek name. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. So I guess we'll open it up, Dale. If you never played linebacker. You were always in the trenches, right?
Actually, I played a little linebacker. In high school, I was a running back and linebacker.
Okay, I
My
got you.
trenches stuff was actually down in youth ball.
Oh, okay.
I played D end, but now you got to remember I played in defenses when a 5-man front was considered not too many up front. We were running 5-man fronts, and 4-man front just really wasn't heard of. It was heard of, but we weren't seeing it. We were mainly seeing 5-man, playing 5-man fronts, and you might even see a 6-man front, just depending on the offense that you went up against. So, and in those days, your linebackers were quite different in their responsibilities. In our defense, we did have what is known as a monster back, so we were maybe a little more progressive in our defense, maybe compared to other teams. I played in the '70s, so that gives you any idea.
It kind of give you an idea. Back in the '70s, I think the decade of the '70s, the average team would score about 14 points in a game. And
Yeah.
today we're probably looking at double that amount, probably about 26 to 29 or so in a given year. But
If
totally
a game
different.
got into the 20s, that was a high-scoring game for that offense.
And just out of curiosity, Dale, how many offenses back in the '70s had more than 2 receivers?
Had more than 2 receivers. You got to
Wide
remember,
receivers, 2 wide receivers.
we were running split T offenses. Some schools did run some of the the more option, triple option type stuff, because Oklahoma was, that was kind of the era of when Oklahoma was really in Nebraska. They were really knocking that stuff up. So
Doing the Notre Dame box, I betcha.
we had split ends. Wide receiver was just really not a term used. I was just thinking cornerbacks were just starting to kind of appear in high school, I guess.
Yeah, when I was in high school, we had flankers and split ends. We didn't have anybody that was really a receiver back then.
That's right.
So what we're going to talk about now, I guess our guest, are you from South Meck? Is that right?
Yes, sir. South Mecklenburg.
South Meck has done a lot of good this year. It's doing a lot of changes. Dale, what year was South Meck won the or the state championship? It was 81.
81, 82?
Before me.
I think so.
I think it was either 81 or 82. I can't. I should know that.
I think it was 81 because East Meck won it in 77.
70. That was the year I played, my senior year. We lost East Meck 20-something to 14-something. I forget. Our star tailback went down, broken wrist, and that cost us the game. I feel like we would have beat East, and Coach Hip, the East Mecklenburg coach, felt like we would have beaten them. I played at West Mecklenburg panels. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what the culture is? There's been a culture shift, a little bit of a culture shift. So why don't you tell us about that? But tell us about the standard and your view of the standard as a player.
So Coach Evans came to South Meck my sophomore year. We had just came off of, I believe we were 3-8 my freshman year. And he comes in late, we're trying to figure out at this point, it's like almost halfway through June and we still don't have a head coach. And he comes in and we're like, all right, so we'll see how this goes. And he introduced us to the standard. That's been his phrase since, and we live by it. And the way our logo that we have, it's the standard and it's underlined. And that underline is supposed to mean that the standard is supposed to be above subpar. You know what I'm saying? That little extra bit to where we emphasize we're doing more than what we need to in order to get to where we need to get to. Now, sophomore year didn't go as planned, which is fine. And you mentioned the culture change, and you look at us now, and hey, we're what 5-1 going into 8K in 2 days. Going from 0-11 at first it's just been a building block since then. Those seniors that year mentored all the sophomores that were playing on varsity because we didn't have a lot of players out there at that point. Last year we ended 4-3 in the spring season, and now we're continuously just working harder to keep getting to that final goal of, getting that state championship.
Just out of curiosity, did you ever play JV, or did South Mech have a JV team when you were like a freshman?
We did have a JV team. I played 3 games on JV. My freshman year, I got pulled up to varsity, and I didn't really get that much playing time. I wasn't big enough for it. I was like, what, 5'11", 5'10", 160 pounds playing linebacker. So I did get pulled at varsity. I've had 3 games of JV and been up ever since.
Just also with the numbers, like right now, how many guys do you have on varsity? How many guys do you have on JV this year?
I do know on varsity we have 28 seniors.
Wow.
So we have a lot of seniors this year, and to think that basically every senior that we have was on varsity sophomore year, that's dedication. We all put trust into the process that Coach Evans was building, and starting to pay off. I think now we have close to 40 something on each, 50 on each.
Wow.
Really? That's good.
Because Dale,
We got a lot of players.
I think it was 2017 when we went to we had a jamboree down over in Olympic, and I remember talking to Rocky, and if I remember right, he only had like 35 players on varsity. It wasn't many players. I remember that.
Yeah, it was a small number. The program had a very small number of players, which is hard to compete in, especially in Charlotte with the 4A schools that you're playing against. It's kind of hard to compete with that number of players because you may have some good players, but you're going to be playing them 2 ways, and that's just not a recipe for a winning season. Be very, very difficult. So I'm impressed in that so South Mecklenburg has always been one of the largest schools in the state, which has been one of the draw factors about the coaches maybe wanting to coach at South Mecklenburg. But player turnout for decades has been bad. And I mean decades. It wasn't just under during Coach White's time frame. Prior to Coach White, in fact,
Right.
prior to Coach White, it was potentially even worse.
Yeah.
Right. So, what is the difference in the school that is getting more people interested in playing football at a time when parents are looking at not playing kids because of concussions?
A lot of people saw us sophomore year and we're like, hey, this team is 0-11. Who wants to play for them? Right? Last year we go 4-3, start getting a little bit, getting a few people's attentions. And, we get to where we are now and there's still, we got our whole entire stands are just packed out, right? Like everyone's there. Everyone's like, you guys are doing great. It's those people that don't want to put the hard work off of Friday Night Lights. They're not willing to dedicate their time, their summers, to go out there and work for it. And then once we start to do well, they're like, hey, I really want to be a part of this now. It's either you're with us or you're not. You can't come in late. And that was somewhat of a struggle at first, but now everyone saw and heard about what we were doing and they want to be a part of it now.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, we were a game. Different schools do things different on Fridays, but our tradition on Fridays was to wear game jerseys to school. And the comment that was made about some players was, you're only doing this so that you get to wear a jersey on Friday to school. You don't want to put the work in. You just want the jersey and the recognition of being part of the team, but not actually contribute to the team. That's a tough thing for some people to get through their head, that, the rest of you there want them working every day, because as a unit, that's how you get better. So you play linebacker. You've been linebacker your entire life in high school, it sounds like.
Actually, it is not.
No?
Surprisingly, I was not. Freshman year, I was inside backer. Sophomore year, we had injuries and shortage of people, and Coach Evans came up to me and was like, "Hey, I might need you to play running back." And I was like, "Let's go, let's work, let's get to it." So sophomore year, devoted that season to running back. Junior year, I went and played our outside backer and running back as well. Played both.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, now I'm just outside backer, living the dream.
Fun, isn't it? Defense is more fun than offense, I believe. It's more fun to hit someone, right?
Yeah, I'd rather hit than be hit.
Now, talking about making some hits, I mean, there's some payback going out now. A couple years ago, you were 0-11. You got some guys or some teams out there that you're going to have some, you're going to get some payback this year. If you probably already got some payback. Tell me 2 or 3 teams that you feel like are South Mech's biggest rivals. The 2 or 3 teams that mean the most when you beat them.
Even though we didn't beat them this year, Catholic is always, number one up there. We're about less than a mile down the road from each other.
Right.
I mean, we could all walk to their stadium and have a game if we really needed to. And buses weren't working, be like, hey, let's walk over there. That would probably be our number one. Myers Park is also up there, and I know we play them in 3 weeks. It's always just been South versus Myers, always going at it. And honestly, third, until really like the past few years, it's starting to become AK. And we play them tomorrow, and it's gonna be a fight for it. But I really think we could pull away with it.
Dale, here's a little trivia for you. You remember Foot Soldier? I know. You know what Foot Soldier
yeah,
used to call?
Yeah, I know him well. Uh-huh.
You know what his nickname was for AK?
His nickname for AK.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Barney the dinosaur.
Barney.
That's
right. Purple, because of the purple. That's right.
Yeah, he used to give people fits from AK and just to tease them on that. And I'm like, guys, Lee's a good friend of mine. I'm like, Lee means nothing by it whatsoever. He's just trying to get a rise out of you. But yeah,
so Barney. I'm sorry. You were at the game Friday night. What did you think about what you saw?
I give Audrey Kell props for how they played,
mm-hmm.
but I don't give them enough because they couldn't finish it out. Going into half, it was 7-6. Audrey Kell was up, and they were playing pretty good defense. They were playing decent offense. They were making completions. They were getting yards, but when it came down to crunch time, they just couldn't finish. And Myers Park walked away with it. But I give AK props for, keeping that such a close game, keeping everyone on their toes to watch. But they just gotta finish on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was on their defense for obviously keeping it close. Their offense had many opportunities throughout the game, and didn't come up. So you guys, you get Myers Park in 3 weeks, you get Audrey Kell this week, you get Olympic the following week.
Yep.
That's you, and those 3 are the top teams in the conference, I believe. And most likely, we'll see tomorrow night, but I think it comes down to Myers Park and South Mecklenburg.
Yep. That's the big ones.
That's the big one. So What's your favorite subject in school? I'm gonna take this someplace, but
Okay. It's always been math. Surprisingly, I've always enjoyed math. It's always come easy to me, so I'd probably pick math as my favorite subject.
okay.
This is a special guy. I like this guy.
Yeah, I like math too. Math is
Yeah.
that's my thing. I like numbers. There's no bad numbers. I love numbers. I love to see what numbers can do. Numbers define everything.
Yes, they do.
I'm a science guy, physics guy.
I'm not
But,
a physicist guy. I'm a mathematics guy, statistics guy.
but trust me, Jim, numbers is all in physics too, man. It's all everything's defined by math, so that's good. As you look on to what will happen after you leave South Mecklenburg, certainly you want to play football, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, sir.
What is that looking like right now?
Recruiting has been a pain for not just me, but a lot of people. If you're not those 5-star Hollywood Browns at Chambers, it's hard. With the NCAA giving that extra year of eligibility, it kind of puts everyone in the class it put people in 21 in a bind. It's putting everyone in 22 in a bind, and I think it's going to carry on to 23 and 24 later on. But it's been a little tough.
Yeah, the other thing that hurts recruiting is the transfer portal, I think, because that allows too easily now, I believe, big schools to pick up players that might have those schools may have recruited a kid in, but now they can transfer a kid in, and that lessens an opportunity of a kid getting a shot. So I think transfer portal's a big deal too. But what do you look at doing in college as far as studies? What do you think you want to study? Because my belief is you should be considering, if you want to play football, you want to play football, but you should also be considering how you marry that with what you learn for life.
So I want to major in business administration. I want to get my master's in that. And after I get my master's in that, I want to break off into sports management.
Okay. So you're gonna go in straight studying business, go all the way to an MBA, instead of getting an MBA after maybe going into another field. And then you want to go into sports management, you say? Do you
Yes,
want to
sir.
be an athletic director or something like that?
Something across those lines.
Okay. So recruiting's been tough, but are you talking with anybody? Are you considering anybody? D1, D2? What's
I've had a little bit of conversations with a couple of D1 schools. I've had a lot of interest from Elon. They've been talking to me since I think January now, and a little bit of Furman. Those are probably the top two that have shown the most interest. But I mean, I have a little bit of conversations here and there, but that's honestly right now, that's not the biggest focus for me. The biggest focus is the season. I really want to go far with this team. It's senior year. It's the last chance I have, and I want to make the most of it.
That's good to hear. That should be your focus. Your team should be your focus right now, not you. You got to care about yourself, but you need to care about your team too.
Yes, sir.
Well, I was hoping Jim had a question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was just thinking out loud when I was a senior. I guess I started my senior year 33 years ago. 33 years. Gosh, I'm old. But
No, that's young.
well, I mean, everything's relative now.
That's right.
So, tell me something about what you want the guys that are like freshmen rising, going to be rising sophomores next year. What do you want these guys to learn from you to pass the South Mech tradition? Because I think y'all pretty much changed the culture of that program. What are some lasting things you want the freshmen, sophomores, even the people that might be in middle school to learn from your class?
Life is always going to give you a curveball. You know, you will never have a perfect plan that's going to fulfill itself. There's always going to be some sort of bump in the road. No matter what it is, just stay true to it. You know what I'm saying? 0-11. I can bring it up as many times as possible because we've overcome it. You know, 0-11 sophomore year. Hit the weight room, back to the drawing boards, and just put work in. You know, the underclassmen at South, I believe they'll follow our steps. You know, buying into the program, dedicating themselves to football and the program in order to continue what we have going on.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I don't have to tell you,
the,
or preach this to you, but you got a coach that loves every one of you. And
he tells us every day at practice, or as much as he can, that he'll treat us how he treats his son.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you something else. Every team that Coach Evans ever had is always better because of him. I remember Independence. You remember that year? They were undefeated. So I forgot it was 2014 or something like that. Undefeated during the regular season. I think only 2 teams even scored anything against them. I mean, yeah.
He just had that bump in the first round. Yeah, exactly.
I think it was the second round, actually.
No,
He played. Did he play? Okay.
Yeah,
but the next year he was gone.
Fairly confident they lost first round.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it just incredible coach on that. But and something to share with you. When I was a freshman at my high school, we were 0-10, and by my senior year, we got up to 1-9. We didn't change the culture, so we went 0-10, 2-8, 3-7, and then 1-9. Of those 9 losses, 8 of them were within a touchdown. So there were a lot of improvement. Just didn't see on the win-loss records. So I like what you're saying. You can't sweat the small stuff. That life will give you plenty of curveballs. That's for sure. The curveballs are okay. The knuckleballs are the ones I have a lot of trouble with because they're just floating and just go everywhere. So,
you know what a submarine pitch is?
Oh, I sure do. I'll tell you what.
That's a
was
tough
it? He did the Kent Colvey. You remember him from Pittsburgh? Really good submarine.
My dad was a submarine pitcher. Anyway, so
their fingers will hit the ground sometimes.
We were just kind of chatting. We got some other things to cover. Do you want to stick around with us and chat about it? You're welcome to stick on.
I'll be able to stay on for a little bit.
Okay, because we did want to cover a few other things. I am going to be at your game Friday night. I'm going to try to. Yeah, I'm wanting to see all the interactions between the top teams in your conference this year. That was one of my goals that I set forth at the first of the year, was to see who was going to be the conference champion of the South Met Conference. Certainly the other 2 conferences have some great competition going on. It's easier for me because I'm in Southwest Charlotte. So it's easier for me to be able to scoot around and get to all of these games. But Jim, let's cover a couple of other things here. And you wanted to talk about history of the Southwestern 4A.
I do.
Maybe this young man might want to hear some of that.
And this kind of goes back to from 75 to 1984. There were exactly 10 4A teams in Mecklenburg County. You had West Charlotte, you had West Meck, South Meck, North Meck, and East Meck. You had Garinger, Harding, Independence, Myers Park, and Olympic. And all 10 of those teams played in the same conference, so they had 9 games and had exactly 1 non-conference game. What happened was in the 73 alignment, you had some teams from I think Gastonia, I think it was one of them, maybe Asheville was part of it. And by 74, the guys, the Gastonia teams and Hickory and Asheville, like, yeah, we don't need to play these guys, or we want to do something different. So they got together mid realignments and had a 10-team Southwestern 4A conference. And I'm going to open up my Mecklenburg County file, then I'm going to share my screen if I can.
I remember that we scrimmaged Ashbrook, and we just painted our helmet. We just received our helmets, and I played fullback, and I took a hit to the head, helmet to helmet head, and I had a big green stripe down the side of my white helmet because the Ashbrook had those green. They had green helmets. They were a tough team. So there were tough teams over in Gaston County. A lot of us scrimmaged them because they were parts of the conference earlier. That senior year, our non-conference game was Monroe.
And I'm going to try to share my screen here. Let's see if I can. I have to get, something else to let you know, Panos, the older you get, you can't see anything up close anymore. It really sucks.
Hey, have you noticed how he has to keep his hair out of his eyes and everything? I used to have nice hair too when I was your age. In fact, I almost had hair down to my shoulders at one time.
All right. I don't know if there's a way to make that thing any bigger or not.
And that's your mom does a lot of photography, right?
Yes, she does.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, she just stepped in the room. I have to leave. I'm so sorry. Okay. I wish I could stay longer.
No, that's fine.
That's fine. It's nice to meet you.
But it was nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
And please come anytime.
Have a good game Friday night.
All right. Take care.
Thanks so much. I'll see you there.
Okay.
So let's break this thing up here a little bit. I'm gonna start back in the '73 season. I got South Mech actually, and just looking at it back in '73, South Mech, I believe they actually went to the championship game that year and lost to Greensboro Smith, Ben Smith. It's hard to believe Ben Smith was a powerhouse back in the day, but they were.
They were, yeah. I remember those days. Yes.
And now they struggle at 3A. Really struggle. Back then, South Mech, West Charlotte, Garinger, Hunter Huss, Independence, and East Mech were in the same conference. And then let me pull up West Mech because I know West Mech is in the other conference. Let me go down here. And the other conference was West Mech, Harding, Ashbrook, North Mech, Asheville, Olympic, and Myers Park. So it was kind of interesting that Ashbrook was in one conference and Hunter Huss was in the other conference. West Mech and, I'll say West Mech and North Mech. That's a pretty, if you ask me. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it just seemed like it'd be a pretty lengthy. Since I would have South
between West Mech and North Mecklenburg.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Back in those days, especially.
Yeah, it's just weird how they had the conferences put together. But in '75, let's look at West Mech. They started out the season, played a conference game against Harding and beat them 20-0. And then after that, it was all over with. They went 1-9.
Yep.
Oh, excuse me. They actually went. They lost 8 games in a row. Then they beat Garinger 20-19. So they actually went 2-8 that year. And but look at some of these teams right here. I mean, the losses. I mean, Myers Park only lost by 8. North Mech 14. You can see right here. I think West Mech averaged just a little less than 10 points a game, and their opponents averaged right at 22.5 points a game.
Do us one favor, Jim. Go down and zoom, in the bottom right of your Excel window and zoom it out a little bit. That maybe help. Help me. There you go. We can see it a lot better.
Yeah, let me do that here so we can see that.
Yeah, so as
So
you can see, you don't see a lot of high-scoring games. You don't, in fact, 34 points that season, 35. South Mecklenburg, 35-15.
right. So you didn't have a lot of scoring back then. Actually, I just for the heck of it, I'm gonna do a sum of how many points West Mecklenburg scored in a season, or on average. So they played 99 games back in the 70s. I think one year they actually only played 9 games
Mm-hmm.
back in 1970. In 99 games, they averaged just a little less than 12 points a game. And today, if you average a little less than 12 points a game, you probably didn't win any games or not many games.
Right, but then in that span, West Meck didn't win a whole lot of games either.
Correct.
I mean, they weren't a powerhouse.
So basically, they averaged 11.5 points a game, but they only gave away about 15.5 points a game. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
big difference. I mean, just a big difference back how the scores were back then. Now, just kind of give you an idea about West Meck. They won 37 games, and they lost 58, and then they tied 4. So 37, they're basically a 4-6 team on most years.
Right.
And looking at that, see, they had a 4-5. 1971 was a very good year. They went 7-1-1, but they were not good enough to go to the playoffs. I imagine Olympic went that year because they lost to Olympic 14-0. I'm gonna go down to this right here, and then I'm gonna make it
Well, you got to
bigger.
remember that era was also the era of how teams made the playoffs, how many teams from conference could make a playoff.
Right, there was one
One
team that can
team.
make. Yeah,
Exactly. So it wasn't you had to win your conference to make it into the playoffs. So
it was
very,
interesting
very
too.
difficult.
West Mac, the West Mac went 7-1-2 that year, and just looking at Olympic, they were 4-5-1. So that game was an upset.
Yeah, Olympics year was the year prior.
Yeah,
That's
the
when
year prior is
they
when they
made
went 9-3-1. Yeah,
they went to the state championship and lost.
interesting one. Back in 1970, Geringer was in the conference. There was two 4A conferences in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Geringer was in the other conference, and they tied 14-14. So how did they decide? It was based on yardage. The
Yardage.
team that
That's the
had
way
more
ties
yardage.
were, exactly. That's the way a tie was broken was offensive yardage.
Could you imagine if it was something like one team had 235 yards, the other one had 231? Could
Yeah,
you
that's
imagine the people what we'd hear now? It'd be awful.
exactly.
So having a little bit of fun on that. So let's look at that. Let's look at the very first year that they was created, 1975. Olympic went 4-5-1. I'm gonna go down to every one of these and kind of scroll down. Independence. Everybody thinks Independence has always been this great. They were basically a 500 team before.
Yeah, Independence
Knox
was
got there.
up and down, up and down. Exactly. They have a good year, they'd have a not so good year until Knox came in. That's right. Now, actually, it was Jester, right? That was there right before Knox.
Right.
And I think the late 90s teams were pretty decent as well, but it really turned around in 2000 with Knox. Yeah.
So let's also look at Geringer. Everybody thinks Geringer was a big old pushover. Geringer had some decent teams.
Okay, take Geringer back to 1959.
Yeah,
And
they won the national champion or the state championship.
they
They
won the
beat
state
Grimsley.
championship in 1959, exactly. But
They went
even in the 70s, they were still 70s and 80s. They had some good teams, not any state championship contending teams, but they had winning record teams.
Well, here's 60. They were 9-2. They lost to
Mm-hmm.
Ashley and what's it, Holbrook. They combined to become Ashbrook. Just a little
So
trivia for everybody.
Ashley was Ashley got in a lot of people's way.
They're a good team.
Yeah, they were. They got in a lot of people's way.
61, Garinger went 11-1, lost to Broughton. 62, 4-6, 63, 8-2. Look at that.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things to note is this was before desegregation too.
Yes, you're correct on that. 6-3, 6-4-2, 8-3-1, 6-4, 7-2-1. And then 69 was 1-9. But for that first from 59 to 68, I mean, you can make an argument that Garinger was one of the top 5 programs in the state.
Exactly, and certainly was the best, or one of the 2 or so best in the city in Mecklenburg County.
Right. So in 69, they went. They scored exactly 78 points, and they gave up 256. 69 was a horrible year, but then look at the next year, 10-1-1, and they tied Olympic, but didn't get to advance because of yardage in the playoffs.
Right, exactly. That was a big deal for Olympic. Not just the fact of making state championship, but playing Garinger to a tie, even, because that was a very, very good year for Garinger.
So you got 6-4, 4-6, 7-2-1, 8-4. So Garinger, I mean, they had
which, by
only
the
a
way,
couple losing seasons.
I want to mention that was Coach Joe White, Rocky White's dad, was the head coach then.
Okay. So you get to 75, had a 3-7 seasons. They were a little bit down. South Mech was 7-3. Independence was 5-5.
What was
Olympic,
Garinger in 72, 73?
72, they were 4-6, and 73, they were 7-2-1.
So that's when the stadium is named after Phil Huxton, Houston. I always thought of as a Houston, but that might be a silent G. But I was in youth ball. He is a player that made a tackle, damaged his neck on a Friday night, and he passed on that Monday. I remember our coaches coming to talk to us about it. We'd had a meeting about, coaches had a special first meeting about how to properly tackle and not use your head because of that incident. It did, at least in Charlotte, drive a number of the youth programs to start teaching keeping your head out of a tackle. Prior to that, it really wasn't stressed that much. It was mentioned, but wasn't stressed. It became a stress point.
Right.
Again, a Houston, a Garinger player. Garinger was still a decent team, even up until check 77.
Okay. Let's get back to Garinger. 76, 5-5, 77, they were 4-6, 78, 4-6. 79 is when they started kind of going down a little bit. They went 1-9, then 2-8, and 0-10, 2-8, 4-6. Then they went to 10-3, and now I think next year they went 0-10. So they really started struggling right when the 80s started. They really started going down. So I think I got all the teams out here. I'm going to start with West Charlotte, though. West Charlotte had some really good teams. Rudy Abrams was their head coach back in
That's right.
in 75. So that year they went 5-4-1. I'm going to move Catholic over here. West Mecklenburg was 2-8. North Mech was 8-2. Myers Park was 7-3. East Mech was the conference champions that year. They went 10-3-1. And look at that. They lost to South Mech. They lost to Independence. And South Mech, they had 3 games they lost in the conference. And Independence had 4 games lost in conference. So think about that, Dale. You lose 2 games in conference, and you're the conference conference champions. That's pretty impressive, you ask me.
It was, well, again, and if you look at those, it was real competitive.
Right.
football in Charlotte then was highly competitive.
And it wasn't linear at all.
I agree.
Because Team A could beat Team B, and Team B could beat Team C could beat Team D, and then
Now,
Team D could beat Team A.
One of the things that I think impacted that is we're in the middle of integration now. I say the middle. We've been into integration now for in Charlotte, Mecklenburg for about 8 years, I guess,
right,
approximately, and that kind of you never knew where you were going to school. Kids could be at one school one year and then at another school the next year, and that kind of caused some of the shifting of player power, if you will, because it wasn't quite as easy. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say. I don't know how much player movement took place because we really didn't hear about it. You rarely heard about a player that should have been in one place was at another. Now, a big one that happened in '70 was Randy Rhino, and Randy Rhino was a star running back at South Mecklenburg. I wish we could get his yardage because he would end up being one of the leading rushers in Mecklenburg County history if we could get his junior year stats. But Randy Rhino went to Olympic that year that they won the state championship. And if you don't know who Randy Rhino is one of he was a 3-time All-American at Georgia Tech. And at that time, I think he was the only in that storied history of Georgia Tech, the only 3-time All-American. He was at South, the largest school in the state, and then the next year he was at Olympic. And that's the way movements happen, that a player could be at one school one year and at another school another year. So that I think had somewhat to do with from the year to year, the way maybe things look kind of maybe a shifting of one team to another, but as far as being a power, but there was a lot of parity overall.
Wanted to bring up, you're talking about integration, desegregation. Charlotte Second Ward was the biggest historically black high school in Mecklenburg County during those years. You did have York Road. I think you had Torrance Lytle up in the
Which
Hunterville
I don't
area.
know about that school, right?
They played small football.
Right.
Oh, and West Charlotte was a historically black school. Actually, West Charlotte is one of the 5 high schools that were part of the NCHS AC, which was the North Carolina High School Activities Conference, which was the historically black schools.
For the black schools, right.
You have West Charlotte, Carver, you got Dudley, you got Hillside, and you got E. Smith. Those are the 5 that exist. You got some teams like Atkins. Atkins was a black school back in the 60s, but the school that's now has no relationship whatsoever. And same thing with Highlands over in Gastonia, totally different, different schools. But so Second Ward, just kind of give you an idea, they played some. I'm missing some school. I think I'm missing 5 from back in the 60s. It's hard to pick up some of the scores from the high schools because the newspapers just didn't report them. But
right.
You got teams like C.A. Johnson. I think that was in Spartanburg. You got Asheville, Stevens Lee, Winston-Salem, Carver, High Point, Penn, Atkins, and Winston-Salem, Highlands, West Charlotte, and Dudley. Raleigh, Ligon. That school actually lasted until 1970. Roswell, Booker T. Washington. So just looking at some of these old names. Gastonia, Highlands. York Road. So anyway, just kind of give you an idea. You're exactly right. Charlotte's, and actually the last 2 years that they were around, they actually played in the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. They played a full schedule. Second Ward got to play against Ashley, Myers Park, Harding, West Meck, North Meck, and Olympic. And kind of looking at the very first time they played integrated ball was, I think, in 6. I think North Mecklenburg played a game against them.
That
Pretty
sounds about
interesting,
right.
if you ask me.
Yeah, it is. No, it certainly is.
So
That's just one thing that people don't understand, that societal culture and how much it impacted across everything, including athletics.
now here's
But
one
it
for you.
was, uh-huh.
West Charlotte 7-2, 8-2, 5-3-2. These are back in the 60s. 3-6, 5-3-1, 6-3, 3-6. They were kind of average. And then you get the 60s, late 60s, 1-7-1, 0-9, 3-6-1, 1-9, 3-5. West Charlotte, the very beginning of, they were really struggling in football. 1-8, 3-7, 5-5. But then you get to this big conference. They went 5-4-1, 9-3. They won the conference in 76. 77, they went 7-3. 78, they went to the state championship, lost to Richmond. And here's a little bit of a trivia question. Who's the very first team to lose Richmond in the state championship game? West Charlotte.
Yeah, I remember that West Charlotte year, and of course that followed the East Mecklenburg state championship year. So there was thoughts there that Charlotte would, win another state championship back to back, but of course that didn't happen. Richmond, good team that year.
In 1980, Bruce Harden takes over. They go to the playoffs the very first year. They lost to North Forsyth 9-2. North Forsyth's now a 2A school. They used to be a big 4A school. 81, they lose to. This is one of the few years that the four. Actually, I think it was one of the few years that actually two teams went to the state championship game, or just going to the playoffs from this conference, and they lost to South Meck in the second round.
So you know who? Bruce Harding went to Harding from Olympic. He was an offensive coordinator, offensive mind, and he had a special quarterback there at Harding. Do you happen to know who that was?
At Harding?
Yeah,
I know of a guy named Tom Knotts that was a coordinator.
So there was a coach by the name of Steve Spurrier, who happened to be up at Duke, and he practically lived at Harding High School trying to recruit this quarterback, who ended up going to Clemson. Started as a quarterback, started as a point guard. Huh?
Was it
no,
Elkins?
Mike
Elkins. That's right.
Yeah. So he was a starting point. It was a starting point guard for Clemson, and he was a starting quarterback. And he walked on for the Cowboys. They invited him to walk on, but Mike was a short guy and just too short for the NFL.
A long story. I'll share this with you another time. I met Epley about 25 years ago at a credit managers meeting. He was actually in floor covering. Not floor covering. He was doing credit management though. Back when I was doing it, really nice guy. I like him a lot. 83, West Charlotte's 5-5. 84, 9-3. West Charlotte was the king of kings in this conference for most of the years. They were one of the better teams.
They were.
Then you got West Mecklenburg, who was West Mecklenburg bottom half, if you ask me. They went 2-8, 5-5.
I think 77. Yeah, that was my senior year. We went 6-4. Lost some close games. That's
they 14-5 Olympic. You lost a couple of close games there.
That East Mecklenburg score, the state champion. Yeah.
Yeah, 28-14.
Yeah.
So then you went 3-7, 1-9, 1-9, 3-7, 3-7, 2-8, and 3-7.
West didn't get good until later in the 80s.
Like 86, I believe.
Yeah, they're in the middle 80s when Hambacher took over, and they had some solid football teams. Best in the city, actually.
It was interesting. Like in '86, they went to or 85. They actually went from the 10 teams Mecklenburg schools to, again, they're through East Charlotte, or East Gaston was in there, and I think the Ashbrook and Huss was back in there in the mix. And anyway, it was not the same, obviously, but
No, it wasn't the same Southwestern 4A exactly.
right.
That's when the Southwestern 4A. I don't think the Southwestern 4A ever since then had all the Charlotte schools in it. Now it's too big, but it has been too big for the city's too big. But I think that was the break point. As we came out of the 70s into the 80s, Southwestern 4A, Charlotte schools ended up being in other conferences, especially conferences with Gaston County.
And this team right here, Charlotte Providence, that was the 11th 4A team that came into the mix and came in 1989. That was the very first game Providence played. They West Mecklenburg actually beat Providence 26-0, which is another trivia for you down the line here. So you got North Mech. North Mech was kind of an up and down team. They went 8-2, 6-4, 5-5, 7-3-1. Then 79, they went 10-1. They went undefeated during the regular season. But look at this. They barely beat Lexington. They beat Lexington by 1 point. And this is the same Lexington team that I think it was 2 weeks ago. They lost to South Davison by 5 points. West Charlotte, they beat West Charlotte by 7. Beat West Mecklenburg by 2 points. Charlotte Myers Park 6-0. Beat them 6-0. East Meck beat them by 7. Olympic by 5. That whole season during the regular season, they allowed 39 points.
Yeah.
And then they played High Point Central.
Exactly. That's the thing I remember most about that particular squad was they did not give up a lot of points. As their defense was very, very sound. That was what they lived on, was their defense.
And in their 10 games that they played, they averaged the 10 games that they won during the regular season, they averaged less than 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you right now, you'll never see that happen again.
No,
never ever see that again.
No.
So North Mech went 6-4, 7-3, 8-3, and then 83, 84 they struggled, went 2-8 and 3-7. But North Mech was one of the halves back then. Then we got to Myers Park. They were 7-3, 8-2, 7-3, 7-3, 7-3, 4-6, 3-7, 5-5.
But if you look at those 7-and and 6-and seasons, you'll still see a lot of close games.
Oh yeah,
they were a tough program then.
Oh yeah,
they were not an easy out for anybody. But I didn't mean to stop you at that 11-win season.
Yeah, so we got just to let you know, like when they went 7-3, they averaged 13 points and allowed 12 points a game. So there were some close games there. This game's decided by 5. This one by 4. West Charlotte was a blowout. West Meck, they beat them by 8. Beat Garinger by 8. Beat Harding by 9. Independence by 12. East Meck was somewhat of a blowout. North Meck lost by 8. Olympic was a blowout. I mean, these teams were right there with each other. So in '83, they went 11-1, and they lost to Page. I think Page might have either won the state championship that year or they were co-champions. One of the years there was a co-champion with one of the Fayetteville schools, like 71st or somebody. But and in '84, they had a bad season. They went 2-8. So East Meck went to the state championship game in '75 and lost to Rose 14-13. 76, they made the playoffs 9-2. Another good season here. And that 9-2 season, during the regular season, they averaged 23 points. And they allowed averaged 8 points allowed. So, can you imagine that, having a team that allows only 8 points? Just amazing. 77 was the beautiful season. Let's look at that one real quick.
What a great season for them.
Beat Richmond Raiders 30-0. Squeaked by Olympic 12-8. Harding 20-7. None of these games are blowouts. I mean, that's the one thing you'll notice about it. None of these games are real blowouts. South Meck 14-6. Independence 31-13. West Charlotte 31-14. They did lose to Myers Park. They lost to them 18-14 that season. Beat West Meck by 28-14. North Meck 13-0. And Garinger 14-7. That just kind of shows you the parity of that season, just how close those games were.
Well, again, we're looking at split T, wing offenses. You're looking at 5-man front defenses as the most progressive, I guess. There could have been some 4, I don't recall, but you had. This was an era of more run than pass.
Right.
If you threw the ball, and we happened to be a team that year that was going to throw the ball a lot because we had a really, really good quarterback who, unfortunately, he hurt his shoulder, and the guy that stepped in was very good, but he was a safety that had to convert to playing quarterback, and Hooker could throw the ball. So we had an offense that was going to open it up more and throw more than most teams throw the ball or threw the ball in that era. And it's amazing when you think that if we threw 10 times in a game, that was a lot. And now,
that might be a quarter.
That can be a quarter for some teams. Exactly. So that's one of the reasons you don't see. And so when you define today, I define a blowout as a 21 points or greater. I think that's a blowout.
Yeah.
So back then you didn't see a lot of 21 point plus wins. A big win was a 14-point win. 7 to 14 point win, was big wins back then. So, it was regularly, you'd look in the Saturday morning paper scores and you'd see these teams with, 3-point wins, 7-point wins. But they were winning every week. So,
right.
Defense, man, it really, defense meant a lot back then. Not saying it doesn't mean a lot now, but it meant a whole lot back then because you weren't scoring a lot of points. So the better defenses won versus the better offenses, I think. I might get some people to argue me with. Go ahead.
I agree with you. The defense is also, when you win a close game, you have a little bit more experience about it, so you can go to the next game and win another close game if you need to.
So look at that. So look at the 77 Olympic, 77 Olympic West Mecklenburg score. And
15-14.
That was a 4 overtime game.
What was the first, I think until sometime in the 80s, you still saw tied scores in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know like in the Rocky River Conference, you could still have tie scores in the conference until as late as like 76. But starting 77, you would have these overtimes. But if you played a non-conference game at the end of regulation, that was the end of the game. If it's tied or whatever. So that
so we played a real overtimes in that game, 4 overtimes. Rocky White was the quarterback, and he scored that extra, that 2-point conversion, broke his hand or wrist, I forget what it was. What a ball game that was. Though it's a bad memory game for me, but second, we were up 7-0. We came out, kicked off.
Look at the
And
next week
for who? For Olympic or
for Olympic. They lost to Garinger the next week,
2019?
and Garinger they won exactly 4 games that season, only 3 in conference. They beat Independence 28-7. And who did Independence beat that? Not many of anybody. They beat West Charlotte's
All right.
10-8. And that 77 team,
Yeah,
West
West
Charlotte
Charlotte
went
was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
West Charlotte went 7-3,
Yeah,
and they
they were
lost
not a
to
bad team.
Independence, who was 2-8. I mean, it just shows you the parity in Charlotte football back at the time.
Well, you had what you had almost every Friday night everywhere was a ball game. You had a competitive ball game, which we don't. That's one of the things that's real disappointing about high school football today is you cannot say you can walk into every stadium, say in Charlotte, as an example. You could go into any stadium on Friday night and be guaranteed of a competitive football game. That's not true. You're going to get, there's going to be 40 to 10 games. There's going to be huge blowout games. But back then, it was rare to not have a competitive game. Now, the many times the team you would think would win would win, but they weren't, blowing them out. It was smash mouth football.
Right.
To its truest core. I just remember so many games as a fan. Even you always felt like if you were the team that was favored, you still felt like there was that chance you might not, or you always felt like you had a chance to
Right.
win. It didn't. I don't think that changed really. Oh, you'll probably start seeing that switch happening in the 80s, as especially with Tom Knott's teams, because he really kind of opened the offenses up in Charlotte, and maybe other programs kind of followed him. Though Coach Harding was fairly open with his offense over at
Right.
Harding and at West Charlotte and at Kannapolis.
We're going to just a little bit. We'll talk about Tom Knotts because he's the next one up on after East Meck with Harding. 77 though is interesting. East Burke, they're now a 2A team, a small 2A team. They split out with Valdez Drawn. I guess I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. So East Burke is not nearly as big now, but back then they were a big school. Beat East Burke 25-7. Beat East Forsyth 14-7. Beats Asheville 14-7.
I see we had 2 comments, and I don't know if these guys are still around. Bob Duckworth says Hickory, Ashbrook, and Huss were known as the teams across the river.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And when we're talking about these Charlotte schools, that river and going across the river changed things, and that really got bad in the 90s for some of the Charlotte schools, especially with fan support. But yeah, that's true. And then strap-on spelled backwards is no parts.
I like that.
I do like that. Yeah, that's funny.
So East Meck, I mean, they didn't blow out anybody in the playoffs, and then they get to play Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount today, we think of them as a very good 3A team. Back then, they were a good 4A team.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not at a neutral site. I don't know if this game was in Charlotte or if it was Rocky Mounts, but it was not at a neutral site.
I honestly don't remember if that was in. Something tells me it was in Rocky Mount, but
I think it was in Rocky Mount.
I'm thinking it was. I don't know.
So they went 28-9. They won the 4A state championship. 13-1 that year. The year before they were 9-2. The year after that they went 8-2. They lost to Myers Park and North Meck. 99 or 79. 6-4. They started out strong, went 4-0, and then lost 4 out of the next 6. But you look at those 4 losses: 0-7 to West Charlotte, lost to Myers Park 8-7, lost to North Meck 14-7. Olympic, I would say they got blown out there 24-0. But 80, they went 6-4. 81, 4-6, 4-5-1.
Yeah,
83,
24-0 was a blowout back then. That's right.
and then 83, Rudy Abrams, who was formerly at West Charlotte, and then later on was coach at Garinger, but went 9-2 and 6-4 during that period of time. East Meck was one of the have teams back then.
They were, and they remained a have team, and then it became off and on. It's become off. It's become an off. Well, now it's an off thing, but it up through the middle 2000s, it was off and on, but more on maybe.
Right. Now Harding was off for a long time.
Yes,
they had a good season in '74. They went 8-4, but when all the teams consolidated, they went 1-9 the very first season. They beat Country Day, beat them 26-21, but they lost all 9 conference games. They averaged 8.5 points, and they gave up on average 30 points. They were the weak sister back then.
Without question, that's right.
76, they went 2-8. 77, 1-9. That was the very first year they got Bruce Harden, though, was in 77. He showed some improvement, got the 4-6.
No, not 77. 77, Harden was still at Olympic.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. I think Harden went to Harding either in 79 or 80. I was thinking 79, but definitely 77. He was still the offensive coordinator at Olympic.
Okay. Because I had him that he was 16-15 during those years. Maybe I'll figure it out eventually. But
I've talked to. Well, the reason I say that, I remember reading the articles and all when he left Olympic, but I've had conversation with Rocky about about that time frame, because Rocky and I are both seniors same year, and Rocky has made mention many times about Harden being his offensive coordinator, and I'm pretty sure he was his offensive coordinator in 77.
You know
I won't bet my life on it, but I'll bet a steak dinner. I don't know.
I won't do that. I'll tell you what we'll do eventually. I'll come back and figure that one out. Let me share my screen again here. And share. I'll go look it up and see when Brace became the head coach of Harding.
You can find it in the. I remember there was a great news. There was a big news article about it. I remember still reading it in either the Charlotte News or the Charlotte Observer when it happened. That was a big move.
So in '83, Tom Knotts joins Harding.
Yep.
He went 3-7. '84, 3-7. '85, it was almost like a switch went on, 11-1. But look at those '83 teams. Let
me turn that back on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They averaged 19 points, and they gave up about 24 points a game. They were somewhat competitive, but they could have beaten Garinger. Olympic was fairly close. '84, if they didn't have much improvement. I mean, they could have beaten East Meck and probably possibly Olympic that year in Garinger. And in '85, look at that.
Yeah, see, there was a question up until that point, and then bam. Yep.
And back then, and during the regular season, they averaged 23 points a game, and they allowed 7.6 points a game.
So I was wrong, Jim.
77
Bob is
80.
saying 77 to 80, so I guess I'm wrong.
Okay. And look at right here though. This a lot of people think of Tom Knotts as being his teams always having these great offensive teams, and they do. But look at all these undefeated teams here. The shutouts. They shut out Garinger. They shut out West Meck in '85. In
So he had a
'86,
good defense. He had a good defensive coordinator now. While
yeah.
Tom Owens and that defensive coordinator stuck with him forever. So that's why Geiler's not a bad defensive coach.
So '85 they averaged less than 8 points a game on defense.
Mm-hmm.
86 it was 12 points. Now look at '87. Shutout against Independence. Shutout against Myers Park. Allowed 3 points against East Meck. Gave up a touchdown to Olympic.
Last game.
Shutouts against North Meck. West Charlotte, they give us down. Garinger 6, Crest 6. West Meck shutout. East Gaston 61-7. But just in the regular season, they allowed 36 points. And I've been to games this year where teams allowed 36 points and a half.
Yeah, exactly. A quarter. I've seen it actually in a quarter.
Then '87, during the first week of the playoffs, Independence, they have a rematch. They beat Independence 28-0 at the beginning of the season. And this is when Jester was the coach at Independence. He started back he left Piedmont High School, went to Independence, and then ended up going back to Piedmont
Going back to Piedmont.
around 2000.
2000, yeah, he's Knott's replaced him.
Right.
Exactly.
So 34-32, 18-13, their defense wasn't doing quite as good. And then they beat Freedom, and they beat Grimsley, and then they got to play Gardner. And it was funny, the head coach there, I cannot think of the coach at Gardner's, the Gardner head coach's name to save my life, but it's one of the best videos. You can still find it. And he says, those guys from Charlotte, they're a bunch of city slickers. They think of us as nothing but rednecks. And we're going to show these city slickers what rednecks can do. We're tougher than them. And it was funny. The guy that was on the running back was Anthony Barber for Gardner. He's a friend of mine. He coached at Jordan for many years. And
Davis. Go ahead, keep going.
And every time I see him, I say, every time Tom Knotts, the one coach that Tom Knotts cannot stand is you. And he looks at me kind of perplexed, like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I think you rushed like 343 yards against him at
he ran
the
all
state
over
championship game.
Yep.
And he starts laughing, and he says, I doubt he remembers me. I said, I bet he does.
No,
I bet you
no.
Tom Knotts remembers it.
He will remember him forever. There's no doubt. Who could forget him? Who could forget that night that he had? That was a fantastic. That win was all on his shoulders.
Oh, I agree.
He took the championship right out of Knott's hands because that team was the predicted, power to win. And I'm talking about Harding. There was a lot of that city slicker stuff. I remember that. I remember that on the news. But there was a lot of that thought that because it was
Hal something. It was like Hal Sutton or something like that. I cannot think. His first name was Hal. He just recently died too. It hasn't been. I think he died maybe in 2020. But great coach though. So I was going to say sometime during the off season, I have the video for that Gardner and Harding. I thought it'd be pretty cool. Just turn the sound off and just watch the game.
Well, we could play it, pull it up into a window here and play it and comment on it.
Exactly.
Mike could get the Harding quarterback to join us in there.
I know you're talking about. He's is Ed somebody or?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a good Ed Lawing or
Yep, that's him.
okay.
We
Gosh,
could probably get him to watch it with us. He loves reliving his because also during that era, Harding had a great. Let me rephrase that. He had fantastic baseball, and he had played baseball too. There was two things. The west side of Charlotte, so West Mecklenburg also. My senior year, the baseball team played in the state championships. They were played here at when the games were played here in Charlotte. They were played at Crockett Park, the old Crockett Park before it burnt down.
So one quick thing about Tom Knotts here. Harding in '83, he averaged about 19 points. '84, he averaged 11 points. So it was kind of a down year then. In '85, they averaged 20 points a game. '86, they averaged 25 points a game. '87.
So while it would not be called that, we talked about the air raid offense. Coach Trotter went over the air raid offense. That would have been a 80s version, somewhat of an. I don't want to say it's an air raid offense because of. Yes. But he threw. It was a primary throw offense, and you really felt like you were getting. I'm sure they felt like they were having an air raid hitting them.
They were attacking the secondaries and the linebackers like crazy.
Like crazy, exactly. That was obviously one of Knott's, and probably I think Strong was his offensive coordinator then. Strong was with him for a long time. And could have been more Strong's offense, but I believe Strong was the offensive coordinator then.
So Harding, though, back in my '88, they're averaging 35 points every year. Their offensive production kept on going up and up.
Yep.
So Tom Knotts goes to West Charlotte. '89 was his first year there.
Yep.
Averaged 23 points a game and went 8-3. 1990. They lose in the first rounds.
And I think and I think that you're talking about West Charlotte now?
West Charlotte, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's when, was it 90 or 89 that Providence opened?
89 was Providence.
Providence. That's what I thought, 89, because there was quite a bit. Harding took a couple of hits because of that in coaching. So Harding really fell through quickly when Knotts left.
So kind of looking back about Harding or Tom Knotts during the playoffs. The very first year he goes to the playoffs, he goes out in the second round. '86 he goes way down to the regional final, loses to West Charlotte. '87 they lose in the state championship game. '88 loses in the third round to West Charlotte, and he ended up going to West Charlotte the next year and loses in the second round. '90 he loses in the first round. And '91 is the second time Knotts makes it to the state championship game. This is his 9th year as a high school football coach.
Yep.
And look at these scores here. I mean, blowout after blowout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shutouts. The year before, 2 shutouts, but a bunch of sins here and everything. During the regular season, they allowed 7 points a game, but they scored on average 38 points a game.
Yep.
They beat Tuscola, beat Carver. Grimsley was a pretty close game. And then they played Southview, and Bobby Poss was the head coach of Southview. Southview was one of the worst excuses for a football program for the first 17, 18 years of its existence. Poss gets there around '87, and by his 5th year, they win a state championship game.
So one of the things I want to say here, Jim, is that so up until Knotts appeared on the scene, most of the games were highly competitive. and I'm talking about most games across the city,
Right.
were highly competitive, and you were looking at, wins of one score, lots of, wins of one score, or games within losses of one score, however you want to look at it. Very few 2 to 3 score win games. Very, very, very few. Those were rare. And that took place all really into the early 80s, I think, across the city. And I'm going by memory. I can't, you've got the stats. I don't, but I'm going by memory. But as Harden kind of started opening things up in offense there in the late 80s, or excuse me, late 70s, 80s. But then that whole thing started with Knott's, and I think the city at that point, that's where you're going to start seeing these huge blowouts. Now you start seeing what we call blowouts.
Right.
And you really didn't see a lot of that. So a lot of people don't like him because of the things he did, and those blowouts that you see there, people still remember, and they think of those as blowouts. When you look at what kind of scores we get today, some of those might even be competitive games, but I'm looking up there, I see a 41-0 win there. Who is that against? Olympic?
Olympic, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's just back in that time frame. That's crushing. That's not just a blowout. That's a crushing
that's humiliation right there.
That's dominate. Yeah, that's pure domination. But we saw a shift that other programs had to kind of follow that. And so you'll start seeing other programs, I don't want to say mimicking, but certainly the coaches started looking at the offensive schemes he was running, and then tried to find competitive offensive schemes. I know my offensive coordinator was fairly progressive there in the 70s when he brought in the Maryland offense, the offense of that Maryland was running in the 70s, and that was considered to be a very progressive offense. And to think what that compared to what Knott's put in place just a half a decade later, 5 years later, was tremendous. And so I don't. When you look at this historically, you can really see Knott's fingerprint start to show up in what happened in Charlotte.
Big time.
Because other programs, you were going to get beat 41-0 in an era when you were accustomed to losing to 7. You were either going to make changes to keep up with him, or that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it took some programs a while, because I don't think everybody got a lot of people thought it was just the offenses that he was running. But the other thing that he was doing was he was lifting more. And we're talking about an era now when if you're familiar with the original universal weight machine, we had one of the first two that came into Charlotte. One went to Olympic, one went to West Mecklenburg in 77. And that's like a huge difference from what we see today in lifting stations. But not everybody was really working out in weight rooms, even though some people were getting equipment, but he was. And so his teams weren't just scoring a lot. They were physically better teams. That's why you also saw a lot of those 0-point games that they were giving up. Yeah, Gallagher was a good defensive coordinator, but they also had players. I mean, physical players. They were a physical team.
Yeah, they made players. That's the thing. They made a lot of good players on that. 92, another good season here. They went undefeated during the regular season. Barely beat Williams. Beat them 40-30. Williams is a struggling 3A program. And then payback. South Mech beat South Mech in the regular season 32-20. South Mech beats them in the second round. That would be an upset. 14-13 they lost. That was his 10th. You all right, Dale?
Yeah, no, I'm getting a little dry throat. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is his 10th year as a head football coach in 0 state championships. I'm
Yep.
remembering just telling everybody this because there's a lot of coaches, a lot of very good coaches that have 0 state championships. And, Knott's after 10 seasons, 0.
Yep.
93, another regular season.
Mhm.
They scored on average 41 points, and they allowed 8 points a game. They
Mhm.
go all the way to the state championship over in Chapel Hill, and they get blown out by Northern Durham. This is Kenny
Yep.
Browning's last game as a head coach. He later on would go work for Mac Brown, and so this is his 11th season. This is the third time he's gone
He's
to a
been to the
state
show.
championship game.
Exactly. He's been to the
Third
show.
time, and he's 0-3 state championship games. Can he
Yep.
win the big one?
That started becoming a question.
Right. 94, they went 9-2. They lost to Crest in the playoffs. Crest won the state championship game that year, and then finally, big blowout here, big breakthrough season. He wins the state championship. He beats Bird. But during that state championship season, he does lose a game. He loses to A.R. Who was the head football coach at A.R. Brown back then? You remember?
Exactly. The guy he followed to West Charlotte. So,
And also the guy he followed to Harding,
yeah.
too.
And the guy that he tried to follow to Kannapolis.
That's right.
That's right. A lot of people don't realize that, but he did try to go to Kannapolis. So when Hardin left Kannapolis, Kannapolis wouldn't hire him. He almost made it there. So that was kind of interesting. He followed Hardin at Hardin at West Charlotte, and almost followed him at Kannapolis.
Exactly right. So in 95, this is the first time since, let's see, 92, 91. I'm trying to remember the last time he lost a game in the regular season. He went undefeated in 90. 89, they lost 2 games. 90 was undefeated in the regular season. 92 was undefeated. 93 was undefeated in the regular season.
So I want to point something out here.
Yeah,
Jim, since you're hitting on that, and I forget, it might have been 89 or 88. But Jim Haumbacher, the head coach at West Mecklenburg, they went undefeated. He beat both Hardin and Knott's, and I think he's the only coach to beat both Hardin and Knott's in the same season. Certainly back then, and that's when Hardin and Knott's both owned. They were the.
Yeah, here it is. 88. They beat West Charlotte 13-3, and they beat Harding 3-0.
Yep.
Look at that score. Average 29 points a game, and
lost the page.
And get this, they only allowed 56 points the whole entire regular season.
Yeah, that was a good football team.
That was a good football team. So
they were a very good football team.
So Knott's finally gets in there, and next year he goes to the third round, loses the page, but still look at all these games here. Averages 10 points a game, allows 10 points a game.
Look at the average margin. 40. That's the thing is that I remember about that year is they were just pounding people.
97, they actually had to forfeit a bunch of games here. They had actually forfeit every win they had that season. That should be 422 points. Should be 42 points, but regular season.
They had a great season on the field, but they didn't have a great season on the in the win-loss column.
Well, he scheduled Richmond County in the non-conference, lost 28-14, and then in the third round they lost to Richmond County 27-26.
I remember the articles that were appearing in the Observer and the News about, West Charlotte or Charlotte teams going across the other river, the So we got the Catawba River over here, but going over, to play Richmond County, and not being highly successful.
Right.
So there in the late 90s, Charlotte teams had hard times playing both Richmond and Anson, because that was in that time frame. Anson County was also.
Yeah, actually, they had Ed Emery for a while at Anson County.
That's right, they did.
And of course, he later on was with Richmond. 98, they lose to Richmond County. Richmond County won the state championship in 98. I know that. 99, they lose to Anson. And, so far, though, this is after 17 seasons as a head coach, Noss has won one championship.
One state championship, exactly.
And
he came close. He'd been to the dance 4 times.
Yep.
And got one state championship. Yep.
So then let's look at Independence. We'll go to that Independence and just
So really, Jim, I can tell you around Charlotte, he was pounding everybody, but there was these comments about he can't win the big game.
Yeah.
He can't win the big game. I remember people making those comments like, yeah, well, he beat you 40 points. Well, that's fine, but he can't win the big games. Okay. And that's, when he goes to Independence, and if you look at Independence's record prior, now Jester was there, but those teams were kind of up and down.
From 66 was the very first year that Independence was around. They won 182 games. They lost 178 games.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right. Yep.
They tied 2 games. So there were 182,
and I say sounds about.
And
the reason I say sounds about right, because if you'd asked me about that time period, throwing numbers out, I would say they were a 500 team.
They're a 500 team.
Sometimes they were above 500, sometimes they were below 500.
So 75, they were 5-5, 1-6, then 2-8, 1-9. Back in the 70s, they were not very good. They were 4-6 in 79, 82. One of these, I think it was 81 and 82. Tom Noss was actually the offensive coordinator at Independence.
It was right before he went to Hardin, right?
Okay, I think so. And so it was 6-4, 9-2, then 7-3. They were getting pretty good back then. 7-3, 8-3, 5-5. This is during the Jester years. 4-7.
So Knotts. I think Knotts went straight from Duke to offensive coordinator. I think that's right.
I think so. He applied to be the head coach at Albemarle High School, and they said, no, we're going to give it to the men's basketball coach, who's actually a friend of my mom's. Good fight.
I remember that. Yeah.
Good guy, too. 88, they were 9-3. 89, they were 10-3. So they were having some success, but they had a lot of these 6-5 seasons, too, and got a 3-7.
So those were probably the Mark May years, maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometime in that time frame. Yes. So when was Mark May at
Carolina? He graduated Carolina and he finished the 87 season. So he was at Carolina 84 through 87.
No, he was in 80.
Yeah.
So I guess 83 was probably the year he was the Parade All-American.
Right.
Parade used to, I don't know if Parade still does that or not. Releases an All-American squad, high school All-American squad.
So, yeah.
So Independence had a lot of quarterbacks through that time period.
Right.
That you're looking at right now. They had a number of good quarterbacks. In fact, when May was at Independence, there was another quarterback at Independence, and that kid transferred to go to Spartanburg, South Carolina, so that he could play ball. He ended up playing ball at Florida State, Ferguson.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so both of those were on the team together at Independence, and
that's
Mark May was definitely, he wouldn't get any playing time, so he went to Spartanburg and then went to Florida State. So it's just to tell you, kind of traditionally, I don't know why, But if you look across the whole time frame of Independence, you'll see a lot of good quarterbacks played in Independence prior to Knox coming there.
Right.
Yeah, quarterback factory.
So the early '90s, Independence was 3-7, 4-6, 3-7, 4-6. They were struggling just to be average. '95 they had a good season, 94. 96 they went 12-2.
Yeah,
97 they went
Yep.
9-3. One of those was they actually would have been 8-4, but there was West Charlotte had a forfeit a game. 98 they had a pretty good season, but they lost in the first round of the playoffs. Look at that though. 90, 98, 97 they lost in the first round. 96 they won 2 games, but then lost in the third round. So 1, 2, 3. I'm just counting the playoff games they actually won before Jester or before Knox was there. 4-5, 6. They won a game. They lost the first round there. They didn't win a lot of playoff games before.
Again, remember, this is an era of now we're into the era of you could have possibly 2 teams from a conference,
right?
But it rotated as to which conferences could produce 2 teams. So conference champions went, but because we had so many high schools now, they had to start letting in more, teams, and so sometimes a conference could have 2, but you didn't have 3 and 4 teams going. So your opportunities of making the playoffs were still fairly difficult. So having playoff wins were rare.
Yeah, it was difficult. Usually conferences had either 2 or 3 teams that went to the playoffs. From kind of give a little history, back in '85, they actually went from 4 rounds to 5 rounds. So from '85 through 2000, you actually had 5 rounds of the playoffs. So you'd have 32 teams in 4A. And back then, you would probably have 85 teams who were playing 4A. So about 40% of them. And then 2001 is when they went to, or 2002 is when they went to the, they split or subdivided. So here's the last year before Knox got there at Independence. They lose to Crest. No shame in that. Beat West Meck. Got blown out by Anson County.
Mm-hmm. The Anson County was good then, though. I remember Anson County was a. Go ahead, keep going.
Butler was a pretty new team back then. This was only the third year Butler was around.
No, third?
Yeah, Butler. They came in like '97.
I would have thought that was the second year. But
see,
okay, I trust you. You know more about history than I do.
Yeah, '97 was the first for Butler. So Independence didn't have a very good season before Knox got there. They averaged 23 points a game, and they allowed 22 points a game. And then Knox comes in here.
So now let's stop right there a second, Jim. Yeah. So I just wanted to stop there because we had this conversation on Talking Preps last week, maybe, and it was about breakthrough and teams hitting barriers and not being able to break through. West Charlotte was encountering those, and they were the comment was made, well, Independence had a problem with that until Knox got there. But I think people remember that there were a few good years right before Knox. That last year was not good. They did have some good seasons prior. And it's nothing against Jester there, but it was kind of a rotating thing for Independence to be an up and down. And I don't know that it was because they couldn't break through, but now
Jester was a better than average Independence football coach. So let's put it that way. I have a lot of respect for him.
He was. I would say he's the second. Well, historically, he's got to be, ranked number 2.
Yeah, 2 behind Knox and wins. So in 2000, they played North Meck the very first game of the season in an endowment game. They didn't play them the year before. Beat them 42-28. They lose to Crest 34-31. The year before, they lost to Crest 23-8.
Contention call in the end zone. There was a little controversy with that, but yep.
So they were 1-1. They were averaging 31 points a game and 6.5 points a game. And then they blew out West. They get to play Anson County. The year before, Anson County beat them 44-0. And look at this
Yeah.
score, 76-40.
Yeah. So that the 54-0 over West Mex not a surprise because West was not a good team. But that Anson County game was a bit of a surprise. Losing to Crest, and then Crest, no shame in losing to Crest, but Anson County's kind of been they were a tough team. A lot of Charlotte schools played Anson County there in the 90s, and
They were tough.
and even in that time frame, yeah, they were a tough team. So to me, that was a huge win.
Oh, big time.
76 points on Anson County, yeah.
So, then they beat Providence. They beat Butler. They came back and beat Butler. They were 37-31. The year before, they lost by 3.
But now check something, Jim. So you see that East Mecklenburg score. Now check
Right.
East Mecklenburg's record that year. I don't know if I'm confusing 2000 or 2001, but what was
East Mech that year was 6-5. 2001 was their special year.
Yeah, that was their special
when they
year.
went 13.
So 2000, though, they were still a pretty decent team. So
yeah, and they had Scott Stein was the coach then.
Oh yeah, yep.
So you go to go down here, Myers Park. They lost the year before. They beat them this year, 21-0. Beat Garinger, 59-0. But this one right here is the score I want you to look at. They beat West Charlotte 53-7. The year before, when Tom Knotts was at West Charlotte won 55-12. So you're talking about a swing of 98 points. 98.
Yeah, well, you're talking about 180. Both of them flip. Actually,
Yeah.
Look at those scores, and they both kind of flip. But you got to remember one of the things that, or understand that one of the things that happened at West Charlotte and with Tom Knotts is that he took his staff with him. So when he went to Independence, he had a very functional staff. So that kind of stripped West Charlotte of coaching.
Right.
There's no in that time frame we're still not into school choice yet. I think school choice came along a year or two later. So you were still sort of forced assignment. It was still forced assignment, but it was school choice. But you could at least choose one of the 3 or 4 high schools in your district. What was West Charlotte's record that year?
6-5. They went 6-5.
That was
here you go.
Yep.
So they went 6-5 that year. They beat Olympic, Harding. They beat South Meck, Myers Park, Garinger, and Butler. Now, going to this right here, though, they beat McDowell. They beat Ashbrook. Ashbrook beat them 31-21. Richmond County, that was a big win right there. That was one of those, you exercise the demons. That was one of those games that Tom Knotts exercised some demons right there. Anson County.
There was that. Yep. Because again, it was that Richmond County always, or the people across that Eastern River. Anson or Richmond, were both real tough opponents.
Right. And, it'd be another 10 years until Scotland became really tough, or maybe another 5 years. Scotland wasn't that tough until maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. But then, this was a rematch. Anson County, they beat Anson County 76-40. Looky here, 30-28. That must have been a pretty good game. And now here's another demon that was exercised. You remember back in 91, Tom Knotts lost to Southview? Yep. They beat them this year, 24-19. The following season, this right here, they averaged 43 points in 2000. and in 2001 they averaged 48 points.
Yeah, this was a
Allowed
great year for
11.
Chris Leak. Yeah,
I mean, just
that was a great team, but Chris Leak had a great year that year.
I think 2004. This is the year that Tom Knotts had left Independence. Was the quarterback coach at Duke.
Yep, that's
This
their
one right
best
here, they
team.
averaged 54 points a game in 15 games, and they allowed 8.5 points a game.
You know, and we talk about sometimes. So when I look back at teams, this is my best team of that was an Independence team. And how good was it? They almost were just set on cruise control. Now Geiler's a great coach, and I think Geiler did a great job, but that team didn't need to be coached hardly. I know that's a vast overstatement, but that was one heck of a football team there. That 2004.
They
Look at the
trained
Richmond score in the playoffs. I was at that game, and it was so 2003 Richmond Independence playoff game is one of the best football games I've attended. That was it was a cold night at Memorial Stadium, a great football game. Richmond is like, Richmond, I remember the Richmond fans in 2002 and 2000, or all the way through 2003 was, you're not going to be able to get by us. We need to, it was always, you need to get to us. Independence, like, well, just make it to where we can play you. And so that was a great ball game. And then the next season was just, oh my gosh, you're looking at great Richmond teams. And that was a great Richmond team that came in 2004. It was a very, very good Richmond team, but they just, I look at that game right there. Yeah. And so Newbern was that Newbern game was, I went to that game, and what a difference it was from the year before. But and I'm talking about so you got the 2003 Newbern game, and then scroll down.
2002 they beat Newbern 41-20 as opposed to 54-7.
Yeah, exactly. So
they beat Laney 49-25 in 2001. So, but it's wild. That 2005 team, they beat Newbern again. 38-19. Newbern would finally get some vengeance in 2007.
That's the dark year of football in Mecklenburg County.
And right here, a lot of people don't realize this win right here by Butler, 21-20, was huge. Also, earlier on that season, Independence lost to Elder, and the I think it was 107 or 109 games winning streak was broken.
107, wasn't it?
107.
It could be 109. My mind is, who knows?
It's
107, I thought. But
I think it was 107.
109. Yep.
It had been to a crest, but that was the first team in Mecklenburg County to beat Tom Knotts while he was in Independence.
That's right.
And actually, let's see, in 2008, Dope team beat Tom Knotts in Independence.
Now there were there were some opportunities. If you'll go to 2000 and look at the 2006, I think it was. It's either 5 or 6 Providence score.
20-14.
I get. So that's the 2000. Look at 2005.
2005 was another close one.
Yeah. So that one is the one that the 2005 is the one that Providence went up 28-0.
Well,
they jumped up big early. Kind of one of those same things like what happened with Butler at the Butler game in 2006. 2006, I think it was the second, because if you look, they were both in the same conference, and then Butler and Independence, and then they would meet in the playoffs,
Right.
Typically. So
what I wanted to share here, that 2007 Butler was the first one to finally beat Knott's at Independence. In
yep.
2009, Butler beat Knott's at Independence. Those are the only two teams in that decade that beat Tom Knott's at Independence within the confines of Mecklenburg County. And who was the head coach at Butler back then?
Well,
The guy before Hills.
they're trying to run him out up there in Kannapolis.
Coach
Newsom,
Newsom.
great coach. I like Coach Newsom. At 2009, while 2008 that was big, that 2009 was really the breakthrough for Butler, I think.
And right here was the regional rounds when Butler beat 38-14.
Mm-hmm.
That was when the Ding Dong, the witch is dead. Knott's leaves to go to South Carolina. What happens to 2010? Yep. They went 3-8. It was almost like a switch went out.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Galler took over.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many coaches Knott's, but one of the other things you got to understand that was happening there in the late 2000s at Independence was Strong was getting old. And Strong, I remember, went over to North Mecklenburg. So that whole coaching staff, Knott's a great coach, but what Knott's, I think the biggest thing about him is his ability to organize his coaching staff and command his coaching staff. And I don't, if any coach ever hears this, I don't want them to think like they work for Coach Knott, so they know how he was. But he had great people. He was able to say, do this, and they could do it. And a lot of those people were now gone. And Galler was still there, but Galler didn't have all the tools that was there the year before and the year before and the year before. Those tools started going away. There were several things that caused Independence to start going down, and it was the age out of some of of his staff.
Right.
The aging out of lots of staff.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to go from the great run from Independence to the Geringer years here, the real struggle ones. 85 was the very first year they failed to win a game. 86 they went 1-9. They've actually beat Myers Park that year 12-6.
Mm-hmm.
87 they beat North Mecklenburg 19-6, went 1-9. 88 didn't win a game. Came close against us, but didn't win a game.
Mm-hmm.
89 they finally went 8-4. They went to the second round of the playoffs. Reynolds. 90 went 7-4, lost in the first round. And then 91 didn't win a game. 92 didn't win a game. 93 went 2-8. 94 1-9, and then they'd have a good season. They went 6-4. That was for Geringer. 86 went 4-6, or 96. Then went 2-9 in 97. 0-11 98. 0-11 99. Even North Stanley, who was horrible, beat Geringer. 2000, Geringer decided to beat North Stanley and then lose everybody else.
Yeah, then watch what happens. It's not that it's already been going bad, but
it was it got uglier.
It gets ugly from that point. Yeah.
So 2001 went to 3-8. 2002 4-7. Then the losing started. 0-10, 0-11, 0-10, 0-11.
They said they were on a record of losses, consecutive losses, which was
Yeah.
that was repeated again. You'll see, but
Right. 2007, they went 4-7, but all 4 of those games were due to forfeits. They actually lost to Vance 41-0, lost to East Mecklenburg 49-0. That was the year you had 4 teams that basically forfeited every one of their games that they won.
yeah,
2008 went 4-8. They actually made the playoffs that year. 2009 2-9, then 7-5. That 2010 team was good.
yeah. That
Good
was
team.
they won the conference.
Right.
That was their best. That's their best year since probably Schuford. That was their
Right.
best year.
So they went
Since
1-9, 0-9, 0-11, 0-10, 0-11, and I mean, it just goes on and on. That Garinger team,
Yeah,
though, it's
and the
every
number of coaches now, Jim, the number of coaches that they've gone through
just
since
yeah,
2000 is like almost. They got to a point there in the middle, right there around 2007, 2006, that a coach would last 1 to 2 years.
right.
And they were just going. They just and they continue that. That trend has continued to this day, and the record shows it.
Oh, I
Unfortunately,
agree. Oh, I have some records from 50. I got the 58 season here for Garinger also. They went 4-5-1, 9-1-2. But I want to look at from 1960 to I think that's 379. The 60s and 70s, Garinger was they won 118 games and
mm-hmm.
they lost 86 games and tied 6.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So they were basically a 6
Above,
and 4
they were
team, you
above
know.
average team. Yeah, record wise, but some of those years they had pretty good records. They had pretty good teams.
Then in the 80s, they won exactly 28 games in the 80s, and they lost 77 games. And then the 90s came. They went 7-4 in 90. They had a lot of ugly seasons. They ended up winning 22 games in the 90s, and they lost 82 games. And in the next decade, 2000s, and remind you, 4 of these wins are going to be forfeits. They won 18 games, which means only 14 games on the field, and they
One winning
lost
season.
lost 91 games, and plus
Yep.
another 4 from that. I mean, Garinger just like a switch went off on that program.
I mean, when you look at that number of wins, which is a low number of wins, and you have to factor in that decade, they did have one winning season. So if you pull
Right.
that winning season out, it was, and
Made
Jim,
it
I can
uglier.
tell you because we played them when my son was at Olympic, so we were in the same conference, and every time they were like the last regular season game of the season, and every time that game came around, it was also about the time that grades came out, and you would see programs lose players because of not meeting the 2.0 requirement. And several, I think 2 of those years, 3 of those years, at least 2 of those years, the JV games had to be canceled because they didn't have players. They had them
Right.
the week before, but they didn't have them. I remember Wiley Ford was the head coach at Garinger. And I kind of liked him. He played at Olympic for Joe White, and he was a a good guy. I'm not gonna say he's a great coach. I really can't say, but he's a good guy. And I had to talk with him about what was going on at Garinger, and that was in the 2000 and it was his last year, which would have been 2002 or 2003. I don't remember which season, but they had lost 18 varsity players, I think it was, to grades.
Oh wow.
So from one week to the next,
You can't survive something like that.
no. And so he told me, I had a nice long conversation with him about what was going on at Garinger and why were they on this long losing streak and having all these problems. And I've said many times that the key to a successful program is having administration support. So it starts at the principal. You got to have the principal's support. And I gotta tell you this if I never told you this. So the principal that was at Garinger was my oldest son's principal in middle school, and there's some significance to this. So now she's at Garinger, and she's the person that's responsible for making sure you got athletics and whether athletics is important or not. And so my son in middle school, he played football and soccer. Soccer's a spring sport in middle school. And he organized the team. They weren't going to have a team. He raised up, got everybody. He was so into playing soccer, was not a good soccer player at all. This is a guy that played center in high school. So you can imagine he was not a good forward or I forget. He played a mid. They played him at different positions in soccer. Anyway, they played a match against oh gosh, I can't think of the name of the school right now. They're over there by Catholic, but they were the kings of soccer. And the guy that he went against was a dirty player, really dirty. He was one of those players. Soccer can be a very dirty sport. You've never.
Oh yeah, it's dangerous.
When those players get up on top of each other, they're punching, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And I remember as we left, this player flipped us the bird and, yelled words. So anyway, we left and didn't think nothing of it until we get called to go down to the elementary school, the middle school, to have a meeting with the principal. Now, my son was on student government. Everybody liked him in the school. All the students liked him. And what I understand, there were a lot of students actually crying about what happened. So principal says, we're going to expel him. We got to suspend him rather for 2 weeks. And we asked why, and they showed us a letter. So David had typed an email and sent it to the head coach of the other middle school. And he said some things about how, I can't remember the exact words. I'm very not verbatim, but I'm very paraphrasing. It was a tough match, and he's, but player number, whoever it was playing kind of dirty. And since I look forward to playing you guys again. And I forget the exact word he used, but knowing my son, it was all about just being competitive and wanting to get back on the field to compete against that guy.
Right.
The principal suspended him. She said, we have 0 tolerance, and that's a threat. And I asked her, I said, do you understand the context of everything here? She said, it doesn't matter. I said, well, no, it does matter because there's no threat here. And if you understand the context, there's no threat. And Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools ultimately threw it out, but he still got suspended because it took a couple of weeks. So that lady who had no concept of athletics in general from our whole experience with her in middle school was the principal at Garinger at the time. I
don't know how you can be a leader when you do something like that principal did to you.
Well, she's running the athletics program at Garinger, and that's what Garinger suffered through during that time period. Not just her, but other principals. They suffered from what Wiley told me, a loss of administrative support. They didn't really care whether there's a football team or not. And you got to remember, and I don't know if you remember, but in that time frame, Garinger, there was a big article that appeared in the Charlotte Observer that Garinger wasn't going to be able to play home football games because their football field was covered in goose poop. Nobody took care of the situation over there. You would go over there and play games. You would take time kicking rocks off the field, and there were rocks all over the place. Lines were always never straight, never parallel. Just a total lack of support. And certainly some of these things coaches should take on. And in some places they do. I have worked with coaches, and then having worked with Barry Shuford, because we were still involved at Olympic. Barry didn't let those things get him down. He still kept a good field. But a lot of coaches don't want to put that extra effort in of, maintaining the field and doing the other things. And I understand it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that if you don't have support in other areas, there's only so much you can do. And that's why Garinger suffered during that time frame, is they had no administration support for the coaches, the athletic departments. And if you don't have it, if you got a principal that doesn't care whether you play on a Friday night or not, whether you got uniforms or not, whether the field is clear of goose poop, how can you win? You're not hiring people. You're not looking to hire people to win. And then once you lose and lose and lose and lose, who as a coach wants to go there? So your pool of coaches drops. I see you're sharing. Are you sharing a screen again?
Yeah, I was going to try to. I don't know if you can put on the big thing here.
Yeah.
Bob Duckworth just sent this to me. It's from the '87 state championship game between Gardner and Harding. I don't know if we can hear this or not. Let me turn the volume on here. Can you hear that?
No, but I remember this. And I cannot hear it. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. No, I can't hear it.
Unfortunately, okay. I was trying to find that thing where that guy was.
Do you hear it?
Talking about the.
Because
I can hear it.
I should have been able to at least hear it over your mic.
I have a headset on, so that's probably why it's probably funneling the sounds off. But I'm gonna send this to you if you can find a way to play it more powerful. But
well, we'll have to do a show and pick some of these things out, because there was a lot around that particular game. Even the locker rooms being next to each other and being able to hear things at halftime, and I remember a whole bunch of other stories, if you will, about that Garner game. What a championship disappointment for Tom Knotts. I'm glad Bob. Two people are staying with us through this whole thing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
This is just Jim and Dale chatting now about old times.
Oh, this is Hal Stewart is the guy's name. Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Hal
Thank
Stewart.
You.
That's right.
He was a coach somewhere else. He won a state championship in, I think it was over in Fayetteville or Greensboro. I can't remember which one it was, but he won. He's taken two programs to a championship game. And Bob said, fast forward to about the fifth minutes for about Hal Stewart. So hopefully I can find it do it off air because I don't think we're gonna get any sound on it, but it's
I'll have to figure out how to do that. I know I can add another stream channel into here, and so it can be brought in as a stream from YouTube or wherever it may be. I may be able to add it in as another window and play it that way. I'm gonna work that out so that we can. I'd like to watch the game and rewatch that game, and because a number of those games were covered. It was interesting because in that time frame, here in Charlotte at least, they were they did sit TV and play-by-play crews and covered some of the games. That game was one of them. So
need to
there's
get
a nice YouTube film up on it.
Need to get Bob Duckworth on the show sometime. I can't remember Bobby from Morganton or Glen Alpine. I know he knows my cousin Greg Cagle, but Bob is the kind of the minds of the history mind behind the history of the Hickory Tornadoes football program.
Okay, yeah, I know his name. I don't know if actually I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of the guys that was at the Olympic Alexander Central playoff game on a Saturday night. There were a couple of Hickory people that were up in the stands that sat on the visitor side that sat near my wife.
He used to be known as Cheer Duck.
Yep, exactly.
And
I'm thinking he was there. We didn't talk because I don't know him, but I know the Cheer Duck name, and I remember when those guys were talking. It was two or three of them. I kept thinking one of those might be Cheer Duck from because at that time NCHSfootball.com was still around, or it was the ending of it, and all those guys were on there, including him. That's how I know his name, but I don't know him personally. But I do know from what I've read, he knows a lot about Hickory for sure.
You go to I think it's 8 minute mark. That's where you can really hear Hal Stewart talking about them city slickers.
I will. I remember it when it happened because I remember the whole more of y'all look down on us. It's almost the same feeling and I mentioned that Alexander Central game. It's kind of funny because, we go up to Alexander Central to play, and because we're from Charlotte, we got reference to independence, and so y'all coming up here to the country, the guys were, Jim, they were, it was the radio announcers who was also their radio announcing was over the PA system. And they were so bad taunting us. And I'm talking about fans as we were leaving.
Oh wow!
I wrote a letter to the principal of Alexander Central. I remember that I thought that was the way that they treated the fans. It was a bizarre night. That was a whole bizarre night. But anyway, they were taking that same approach of city slickers. You guys coming up here from Charlotte, and we're putting you in your place. You don't think we know what we're doing up here. And he says that fellow is still there. I guess he's talking about the guy that was doing the radio PA announcing. I can appreciate it's just that night. I don't know if it's because we lost a game we shouldn't have lost, which really is not their fault. It was our coach's fault.
I just out of curiosity, have you ever been into a game where the PA gives the home team a $15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty?
Um, I have not, but I can believe it.
I think it was
Oh
about
yeah.
3
So
years.
what? So Bob, that was the night that Olympic had. So my son was the center, but he broke his hand in the Myers Park game, or didn't break his hand. He tore his ligament in his hand here. So they had to put him in a soft cast and then moved him to right guard. And they went through 3 centers through the rest of the season, trying to find a kid who could snap the ball. And at halftime, Olympic had negative 98 yards in snaps, in bad snaps. And so I went down. It was so frustrating. And I was up in the stands. So I went down, jumped the fence, and talked to the coaches. And I'm like, look, I said, David can snap left-handed if you need him to. He can snap left-handed better than these kids are doing. I said, but really what you need to do is go under center. They lost that game 1 score. And had they gone under center, they wouldn't have had all that negative yardage. They would have won that ball game. They told me, no, we're going to play our game. This is what we do. And I remember just walking away and saying, yeah, what we do is we snap the ball over the quarterback's head, make him have to turn and run and get the ball. That's what we do. And Olympic lost that ball game. Now, it was also a game that shouldn't have been played. It was right after hurricanes, and the field was in horrible condition and was still in horrible condition. But all that said, Olympic would have won had they gone under center, but instead, coaches decided not to. So, yeah, it's that game. So you guys were in the stands. I'm pretty sure. I was pretty sure that's who was there. I wish I'd have said something to them. But, yeah, that was that game. Boy, what a disappointing night that was. They drove the day before, Jim, they got on the bus. They went up to Taylorsville. But when they get up there, the game's called and said, we're going to play it tomorrow because the field was unplayable. And I remember talking to some recruiters, some college coaches that saw game film from that game, and they're like, yeah, we don't understand why that game was played. It was like standing water almost everywhere. So why would you shotgun snap, bad field, wet balls? Kid can't snap anyway. And those kids are good friends with me to this day. They're all very, very good friends, all the 3 that shuffled around to try to be a center. And they all will tell you, because they were all like sophomores that year too. They'll all tell you, I don't know why he put us at that position and had us do that. But
you got to put your players in a position to succeed. And so
you got to be able, as a coach, you got to be able to recognize your box, and your box has got to be bigger than what that box. When the box, I mean, your mind box of what plays you'll run, what schemes you'll execute. But I think that season there were only maybe 5 under center snaps the entire season.
Bob says the Olympic was a better team that night.
Better team. I'm going to disagree with that. They had the ability to be the better team. Better teams don't lose.
Better talent,
because, Olympic lost because their coaching staff killed them. And thus, the coaching staff is part of the team. And that whole scheme of not going under center, they had a good running back too. And they had kids that could downhill block. So they had kids, when you looked at them, you're like, those are run blockers. Now they learned to pass block because of the offense that Flowers like to run. But At some point, you got to say, look, I can't run that offense.
Right.
The conditions aren't right. I don't have a center. They would not let David play both ways because, as Flowers told me, he said, center's too important to me. He said, I can't let him get hurt. And so I'm thinking now, you realize a center that can shotgun snap effectively is highly important. And now you don't have one. Why are you doing this? Why don't you pistol snap, or why don't you better just get under center? So I'm sorry, that still burns me to this day. Olympics should have, they beat Waddell that year, and Waddell turned around and smacked these boys because they were better teams. But Olympic beat Waddell on a dry field, and they were able to do the things that they needed, that they like to do. So I don't agree with that better team part, simply because a better team doesn't coach that way. Those coaches lost that game. I don't know how they feel about it today.
So, here's about the
Mr. Ross, you need to just go back up. I'm sorry, but they listened to me a lot. But that night it was like, no, and I would not have done it. But I'm like, how can we lose this ball game? I'm sorry, Jim. I got to move on.
So I was at a game, and it was about 3 years ago, and the PA was kind of taunting the referees during the game. And one time, it was after a play. It was a block in the back, and everybody, I saw it, and several other people saw it, and the referee just didn't throw the flag, and the PA says, well, I guess the referee has more important things to do than consider a block in the back. And you can see the referee just kind of looking up at the PA. And then probably 4 minutes later, there was an interception, but it was the team that intercepted the ball. I think they were offsides or something like that, and it went for the referees. Or went for the PA's team. He's like, well, I guess the referee decided to finally make to.
I'm sorry.
So, and then the referee points right at the PA. He's pointing at him to warn him. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to get interesting. So, later on in the game, the home team makes a pretty good defensive play, but he gets flagged for pass interference, and the PA says, "I'd like to see a replay of that." And all of a sudden, you see another flag, and it was quiet for a while, and all of a sudden, you didn't hear the PA the rest of the game. That guy, I think, was marched off the field, and they had 2 flags on that. It was kind of like I think it was like ended up being 30 yards or something crazy like that. It was an after the play type of flag. And
I want you to watch this real quick.
All right.
I don't know how to put it in another window, so it's going to play full screen. I think you tell me if this plays.
Come back.
Oh, that's interference.
Yeah, I can see that.
Whoops.
Come back.
Oh, that's interference. Interference or not?
I'm glad I'm not a referee. I probably wouldn't.
Huh?
I probably wouldn't call it.
You wouldn't really?
No.
So I felt like it was interference when it happened, and as I watch it, and the reason being, he grabbed his jersey, and then he went through his shoulder to get to the ball. So, all right, I want you to watch this.
All right.
Fumble, yes or no?
Yes.
You think it's a fumble, really? So
I
they
think
called it a
so.
fumble.
Okay.
I don't think it was a fumble. It is a bang bang, but it doesn't look like the ball comes out until he hits the ground. He's thrown to the ground.
I'm biased though, and the reason why whenever there's a play on the field, I always want to pick what's best for the defense.
So that was bad for the defense.
I like the defense.
That was bad for the defense. Yeah, because that was 4th down. They had the line to gain was the 20. He threw him down at a yard short, and that allowed Myers Park to continue to play and get another 4 downs before they had to turn the ball over to Myers Park. To Ardrey-Kell. And Ardrey-Kell had so there was 4 downs that killed time. So
can you actually
go ahead?
Can you advance a fumble in high school football?
Well, the ball went out of bounds. They marked the ball out of bounds past the first down mark, so it gave them a first down.
That's
so they marked it. Yeah, so that they should. I don't think they should have, but they in addition they spotted the ball a yard up from where the tackle went out, because that's where the ball went out.
Because like in pro and college, I don't think you can advance a fumble. An offense can't advance the fumble. Is that correct?
No, they can.
They can advance I know football or in professional, I don't think you can anymore.
I'm pretty sure in college you can.
You can in college?
Cool. See, I don't, but that one, I don't know why they spotted the ball where they spotted it, other than that's where it went out of bounds. And that's where they moved the first down marker to, was, where the ball went out of bounds, this side of the line versus that side. That was a pretty costly call, I think, to Ardrey-Kell. Ardrey-Kell played that ball game. Like Panos said, they couldn't finish it. They're a good football team, and I don't know how good Myers Park is based on that Ardrey-Kell game, because Ardrey-Kell, they should have manhandled Ardrey-Kell, you would have thought, but instead that was Myers Park didn't barely win it because they didn't do, they had a whole bunch of yards, but things didn't happen right, etc. They were very evenly matched teams. Very, very evenly matched teams. So I don't know if that means Ardrey-Kell's a really, really good ball team, or if Myers Park is just a good football team versus a very good or an excellent football team. I don't know how to put that. I think they're both very good football teams, but are they both top 10 teams is the question. Had a debate about that last night on our private chat on Talking Preps, that I didn't think that Myers Park was a top 10 team.
The thing is, it's so hard to pick who's a top 10 team this year anyway, because there's so many unknowns still. I mean,
No,
If
I
you have
agree. I
if you have
agree.
a
But
if you have a program that's going under type of protocol, it just upsets the timing of the whole
I
program.
agree. I agree. But can you so if you can't consider Audrey Kell somewhere close to a top 10 team, and they really do play them neck and neck, um, to Myers Park, and then you don't see a Charlotte Catholic or South Mecklenburg in the top 10. And I think Charlotte Catholic's better than both of them. That's
Yeah,
just
Charlotte Catholic's good.
that's just my opinion, but I think it's just I agree with what you say. It is hard to pick things this year. How good is Cardinal Gibbons is a question.
Colonel Gibbons is not quite as good as they were like 2 years ago. At the same time, they're a team that's so fundamentally sound that they they improve as the season goes on. I saw them in the very beginning of the
Right,
season. Saw them against Julius Chambers. Chambers played basically Chambers. It had more of a 3 touchdown field type of win.
right.
The final score was 35-29 because Cardinal Gibbons came back in the fourth quarter. That game didn't get over until about 1 o'clock. He had a 3-hour delay
I
because of
remember it.
lightning.
Yeah.
So it's hard to. That was just an ugly game. Um, the one thing that I will say, talking about ugly fans and stuff like that, I heard some of the Cardinal Gibbons kids were shouting out to the Chambers guys, said, "It's all right, it's okay. You'll work for my daddy someday." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"All right, you don't need to play into any snobby stereotypes of your kids,
Right.
but
Right.
it,
Exactly. And they
I mean
don't
that's
know
something
that. They don't know that. That's the
they
problem.
don't
But
even
yeah,
they don't even know where Julius Chambers is located.
no,
Most of
no.
them, but
Well, they just
yeah,
probably recognize a highly black team, you know, and make some assumptions is what
yeah,
they what the kids unfortunately probably did. They may not have meant for it to be racially motivated, but I'm sure that it was. You know, there's maybe not so much, maybe just the stereotype of,
yeah.
well, maybe they're going to be poor and blah blah blah, but hey, that can be that same mentality somewhat exists with the Charlotte Catholic crowd.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
I
The
love
the
Charlotte Catholic, but they have the same mentality.
tell you what,
Um,
Julius Chambers, that whole program is top notch, from their head coach to the athletic to director to the assistants to the players.
well, the
Those
athletic
people,
director's gone now.
is he?
They got a new athletic director. He went to South Point, Rock Hill,
They're
South Point. The one that you
those
met,
are okay.
Carlos Richard.
There are some.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
He a great
Carlos is
guy.
gone now. Yeah,
But all those guys, every one of those assistant coaches are just top notch guys. I mean, they're very caring about their players, very respectful.
I agree.
They
I agree.
professional, and they also want the kids to enjoy themselves. And
Yep.
just if I had a kid, I would love for him to son. I'd love for him to play for Julius Chambers, to have those coaches there to help mentor him to become a man. That's just
Now, there's
real
other
real
good coaches
encouragement.
now. I'm not saying anything against the Chambers coaches, but there are other good coaches too. So
Oh yeah, I
I
mean,
would not. What I would say is I would not mind that they were playing for them. I don't know if that would be the coaching staff that I would if I was said I could put my kids with some staff. That might be actually a Catholic, to be quite truthfully with you. As many of the programs as I like and coaches that I like, I really like structured discipline.
oh, Eric Mormon, or he's a guy. If I had a son, I like Eric a lot.
Yeah, I don't
He's
know. He's not. I guess his teams. We'll just have to say you got to give him time, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
where is he now? Northwest. Cabarrus.
Any of West
right?
Cabarrus?
Or West Cabarrus is one
West
of those.
Cabarrus, right? I think it's West Cabarrus.
Okay.
Um,
And there's some Coach Newsom over at Kannapolis Brown. He's a top-notch guy. I like him a lot.
yeah, I wouldn't mind my son playing for him. I love Coach Newsom. Yeah, I love
Barry
me some Coach
Shefford's
Newsom.
another guy I'd like.
Who?
Barry Shefford.
Oh, Shuford.
Yeah, Shefford.
I obviously I have a lot of respect for Barry. He can be a little. It depends on your kid. To be truthful with you, he's got to have. So one of my best friend's sons who has told me he's going to write a book of Shufordisms, things Shuford says. Shuford can be rather hard
Blunt.
on players.
Yeah,
Very more than blunt. He is very old school, and he can be hard on players. So now I'm going to say not everyone. I wouldn't mind my sons playing for him. And
Donnie Kiefer's another guy I like.
Hey, I'm going to say this: if Shuford was coaching that Olympic team and that against Alexander Central, they'd have won that game big time.
Oh, big time! Yeah, no problem.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't have been a close game, but that's a whole nother story. Barry is a coach that will adapt his players to what his scheme to his players. He's got what he likes to run, but he will run what his talent allows him and his players allow him. And he is a strong disciplinarian. So if you wanted your kid to be disciplined, that would be one. Donnie Kiefer, yeah.
Coach Stone, that formerly of Hickory, he's another guy I like.
Yeah, Russell's a good
Stone.
guy. Yeah, I like Russell. I think Russell's got a lot of integrity. If you're gonna, one of the things coaches have got to do is, besides win, high school coaches, they got to build men and they got to build people with integrity. And he is a man of integrity. So,
Brian Hales is another guy that
I like Brian. His teams could be a little more disciplined, but he's a good guy and he's a good coach. And I would not cry if my son was playing for him. Number of coaches I would not want my son to play for. He's not one of those. There are a number of good coaches out there. So I didn't mean to say anything negative. That wasn't mean saying anything negative about the Chambers staff. It's more to say there's a lot of good coaches that I remember Providence and talking to some players at Providence back in 2004. And one of the kids was telling me that his dad moved into the Providence district so that he could play for Hardin. He wanted him to play for Coach Hardin. So they knew he knew Coach Hardin from, forever and had played for Coach Hardin. So he wanted his son to play for Coach Hardin. Wow. So you've got some of those kind of situations where there are coaches that parents, that's who they want them to be with. That's the coach they want them to be with. Hardin is one of those coaches.
Gotcha.
He had a number of players there at Providence, and those parents, they got the money to be able to do that. So
must be nice. I don't. So don't have. Well, actually, I probably do. I just don't want to have the. I don't have to have the debt exposure to do all that. Well, Dale, I guess we've done about 3 hours. I don't know about you, but
has it been that long? Golly moly.
Yeah, a little over 3 hours now. So.
Okay, I can't believe this.
I believe we can call this evening quit.
I don't know what to do with this, if to clip this up or not. I just enjoyed chatting with you about it.
Yeah, same here, man.
Bob Duckworth, if you're still out there listening, man, we'd love to have you on.
We'll get Bob on here.
We don't get enough discussion about Western teams and other places, and that would be great.
Tell you what we'll
talk
do,
to him about it.
Yeah, well, next time I'll tell you what next time we'll do history. Let's talk about the old Western North Carolina High School Athletic Association.
Yeah,
I think they'll.
WNCHSA said he hung in there with us. I'm surprised. There's
Yeah.
2 people. I don't know who the other person is, but apparently there's 2 people watching right now.
Wow.
Yeah, let's do that. I know again you probably know more about that than I do. I know some, but I think it's good to look back at that era, and I'd like to do one in the future sometime where we go over even further back.
Yeah.
I'd like to look at some of the first football games, high school football games we have recorded. I've done it before, just looked at scores, and finding information is kind of tough. But
Oh, it is. And just to let you know, we have actually had state championship games have been canceled before.
look at her, Carrie. So her
Hey, Carrie.
where's it at? There it is, right there. Her my green screen filter's gonna take it out.
That's awesome.
Her NCHSAA pass came today, so
Well, she's
now
definitely
official. Yeah,
she's definitely the
so
best looking of the Carolina varsity group.
do what now?
She's definitely the Carolina varsity
Well,
group
that's
at
not
this
hard.
point.
That's not hard to do.
That's not hard to do at all.
that's not setting a high water mark. Oh goodness. Yeah, so I got a green screen back behind me, and it's set to block out green. So all the green in the card is look at that's pretty cool though. It actually makes it look transparent.
Well, do it in front of your head, just for the heck of it.
It'll put the
Oh,
W.
wow.
It'll put the V up there because so what it does is it's I have the Carolina varsity background replacing green. Whatever is green gets replaced by that. So okay. So yeah, there's a lot of good things we can talk about. We need to think about what offense, so we can tell Austin what offense we'd like to talk about next week. So give some
formation.
I
formation. The I formation.
Well, I like I formation. I like to do some triple option. The various triple options. I'd like to do some veer. Certainly wing T, because that's my favorite offense. Is the wing T.
Yeah.
Delaware wing T, and then some other wing Ts. Some of the modified wing Ts, but go old school on the Delaware wing T. Single wing. Excuse me, single wing. Anyway,
single wing power, just like you find a place and just concentrate on it.
It's mass of bodies at one location is what that's what it's about. It's a numbers game, and let me put more numbers in that part of the field than you got, and I'm going to get yards. And typically you will. That's the real 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense,
right?
Not the wing T. Although wing, people claim that's what the wing T is, but no, the single wing is your 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense.
I'd even say the I formation would be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust over the wing T. Be honest with you.
Oh yeah, over the wing T, most definitely, because the wing T's got more variant, and it has your sweeps, your buck, and your jet sweeps, and those can be big gainers or big losers.
I know one I wanted to love for him to talk about is somebody I haven't seen this offense since probably Bill Curry back in the 90s. The old stack eye, where you have the 3 running backs.
Yep. Yeah. So when we talked about eye with him before, power eye, so fullback, halfback, tailback,
right,
type of offense, which we ran sometimes. We ran in high school. We ran a split T, 2 back, and then we had a I, and sometimes we'd run power I. Power I was very rare. Young up at when he was at West Rowan. I don't know that he ran power I much. He ran I, but I don't remember seeing.
He was I for him.
Yeah, I didn't see. I don't remember seeing many power I. Tarboro runs the straight T. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Quentin used to run the straight T also. Bobby Lewis.
So the Catholic people told me that that's their base offense. So the kids in middle school learn T formation. So they actually their base offense is T, and then they run wing T off of T. I remember in that state championship game with oh gosh, why can't I think of his name? The running back, Carolina,
Elijah Hood.
Elijah Hood. You know, the kid that when I saw him as a freshman, I'm like, oh my gosh, he looked like a senior, physical specimen. But they did that in the one of the championship games. They reverted to the T formation, and that's what they do. Is they if they have to regress back, they regress back to a T formation. Or if they want to run heavy, they're actually running out of a T and not a wing T. And people don't know there's differences in these offenses, and that would be good for Austin to talk about the gap differences in the offenses at the line. Okay.
I saw Walls Rose Hill and Tarboro play one time. It was with me and Daniel Burleson. It was like 35 degrees and it was cold. It was on Thanksgiving, and we were on top of the box. It's on top of the press box, and the wind was blowing probably about 10, 15 miles per hour, and I was just freezing. I mean, that was one of the coldest I've been. And I had like 3 or 4 layers on and everything like that. And the guy right next to us said, "Oh, Tarboro is going to run Lost Rose Hill down." Tarboro couldn't do squat that game. They lost that game. It was back when Tarboro was had just gotten into the 1As, and they thought they were going to dominate everything. And they struggled for a few years. Now they've won 4 1A championships, but I remember it being just cold. And anybody knows me, if anytime it's under 60, I'm freezing.
The coldest I've been, Jim, I went up to High Point Central. And oh gosh, again, AJ Blue.
I remember AJ. Yeah, he was a Carolina dude.
He was at North Gaston.
He was a quarterback, wasn't he?
He was a quarterback, and they went up and they played High Point Central. It was about 30, mid 30s, same, but the wind flag stood straight. That's how so the wind was probably blowing around 30 miles an hour that night. So AJ couldn't throw. But to see the cold, how cold I was, oh my gosh, because you can't, when it's blowing that hard, you really got to have a lot of layers to keep the wind out. So I'm with you on that.
We had to climb up a ladder that was like next to the press box, and it was one of those ladders so you didn't really feel that safe about climbing it on anyway because it felt like it would just go away. And I remember, like, when I got up there, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go down until I actually have to go down. And
have you ever been to a game at High Point Central?
I have not. Is that a Simeon Stadium?
Yeah, the wall is like got to be 15 foot tall up to the first row. So
I've been to the stadium, but I've never been to a game there.
Okay, so you've seen how tall that.
Yeah, it's impressive. The thing about that stadium, it seats. It's deceptively big. It probably seats more than I think it does.
I couldn't guess, but I bet you could get 10.
I was going to say 10,000 people in there.
You probably could get 10,000 people in there. Would be my guess. That's a wild guess. I've only been to the stadium 3 times, so I can't say for sure. I went up to several High Point games. Actually, Anthony Barber was coaching at, was it Barber or not Barber, but who was the other NC State running back. Coached. Oh gosh, being a State fan, and I can't think of who it was. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Anthony Barber though. Anyway,
Barber. Yeah.
it was. He coached at one of the other schools there in the Triad area.
When I was
All
like
right,
High
well,
Point
Jim,
Andrews.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
man.
High
Listen,
Point Andrew, exactly. High Point Andrews, though the guy wasn't coaching there. You know who played for High Point Andrews?
who's that?
Best running back in the ACC ever. Ted
Trying
Brown.
to think who's running. Brown. Okay.
Ted Brown. Ted Brown. He played for High Point Andrews.
Did not know that.
Ted still holds the record, right? I know he had the
He
record
might
a
have.
couple
I
of
know
years
that-
ago, but I think he still holds the rushing record in ACC. Maybe he lost
Hmm.
it 2 years ago. I have to look.
Probably. Gotcha.
Okay. Well, if Bob stuck with us for 3 hours, we must have talked about something worth listening to. Or he's got no life and nothing to do. And the fact that Kerry listened to us, that's a surprise too.
Bob, I'm sure he has a pretty good life. So
I'm sure he's got a better life, right?
There you go.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Everybody, it's
See you
good
later.
chatting with you. All right, everybody, take care now.
Yeah.
All right, bye.